Chapter 1291. Yang Si keenly noticed the flash of surprise on Wei Si's face. He laughed and said, "Zixiao, you really know everything. Do you know this person?" Everyone's gaze turned to Wei Si. The latter hesitated for a moment, not knowing if he should speak. Without waiting for Wei Si to speak, Jiang Pengji said, "Who cares if he's Hua Yuan or Chao Yuan? It's not our turn to think about him. Bogeo is the victim." This sentence sounded like mockery, but in fact, it was to change the topic and help Wei Si out of his predicament. When Yang Si heard Jiang Pengji speak, he could only rub the bridge of his nose, asking for a snub. He did not pursue the matter. It was not a good deal to be targeted by the Lord just to satisfy a moment's curiosity. Yang Si admitted that he was rather curious. Although Wei Si was not a shut-in, he was not a traveling frog who traveled all over the world to study and never returned home. How could he know so much information? He knew almost all the places that produced the kind of talents. It was simply unscientific. Could it be that Wei Si secretly had an intelligence department that outsiders did not know about? Jiang Pengji secretly protected him, but Wei Si did not dare to enjoy it calmly. None of the people present were easier to deal with than Qiguan Rang. If this special treatment made them hate him, it would accumulate into a reason to attack him in the future. Wei Si felt that he would die faster in this life than in his previous one. In the blink of an eye, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. Wei Si said, "I've heard a little about Hua Yuan." Yang Si immediately perked up. Most people who Wei Si remembered were not easy to deal with, such as Sun Wen back then. Wei Si smiled bitterly and said, "Hua Yuan was born in a small clan in Nanxing. His parents died when he was young. When he was young, his uncle and aunt arranged for him to marry the legal wife's daughter of a declining aristocratic family. He was gentle and somewhat weak, but his wife was shrewish and arrogant. They had a son and a daughter. During the disaster of the southern barbarians, Hua Yuan's family fled deep into the mountains to take refuge. In the end, their whereabouts were betrayed by the servants in the family. His wife and daughter died tragically." He briefly described Hua Yuan's life. Everyone listened with a face full of confusion. Jiang Pengji said in surprise, "As far as I know, Hua Yuan's temperament and the Hua Yuan that Zixiao spoke of are completely different people. If Hua Yuan was really a gentle and cowardly person, even in Shui wouldn't be able to subjugate him, much less set up a series of schemes to steal Yuan Xian's food." According to the information they had received so far, Hua Yuan was definitely not someone who was easy to deal with. "I made a mistake." Yang Si clapped his hands and laughed. "Zixiao, you made a mistake this time." Si hasn't finished speaking. How would Jing Rong know that Si is wrong? It's said that when Hua Yuan's mother was pregnant, she gave birth to a pair of boys. Wei Si had just said a few words when Yang Si's eyes lit up. How could he have forgotten that Wei Si had a pen name of Layman Zaiki? Every novel that he published left him mesmerized. Art came from life and was superior to life. As soon as he heard the beginning of the story, Yang Si's interest was piqued. He could not help but perk up his ears and listen quietly. Wei Si said calmly, "His eldest son died before he reached the age where he could grow teeth. His second son survived and was named Hua Yuan. Before Hua Yuan could be enlightened, his parents contracted an epidemic and passed away. His family business was seized by his uncle and aunt. On the surface, his uncle and aunt treated Hua Yuan very well and did not mistreat the only son left behind by his elder brother. But behind his back, they used underhanded methods to try to raise Hua Yuan into a useless person. When Hua Yuan turned 20, his uncle and aunt arranged for Hua Yuan to marry an unreasonable wife who was shrewish and had a secret affair with someone before marriage. After marriage, this woman held all the power in the family. She was dissolute and did not know how to restrain herself. Hua Yuan was cowardly and did not know how to resist. Until the disaster of the southern barbarians, his wife colluded with her secret lover. The two planned to rob Hua Yuan's family's wealth and flee far away, betraying the hiding place of Hua Yuan's family. In the end. Yang Si listened intently and hurriedly asked, in the end? What happened in the end? The story was about to end when Wei Ci stopped. Wasn't this deliberately tormenting people? Wei Ci's eyes were indifferent as he said, Hua Yuan killed with a borrowed knife. This couple, along with their illegitimate child, were all killed by the barbarians. After all, it was an ancient era where there were not many novels. The story that Wei Ci spoke of was still very interesting. Yang Si was stunned for a moment. This story sounded anticlimactic, but after thinking about it carefully, it was extremely frightening. Wei Ci said, ever since Hua Yuan's parents passed away due to an epidemic, he suffered from insanity. He was sometimes clear-headed and sometimes muddled. When he lost his mind, he told others that he was not Hua Yuan, but Hua Yuan's twin brother. Others thought that he was mentally abnormal and treated him like a fool. His wife also held on to this and often had an affair with her lover without any sense of propriety. She gave birth to a son and a daughter for her lover. Hua Yuan was cowardly and did not know how to resist. But after he lost his mind, Hua Yuan, who claimed to be his elder brother, was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He was cruel and cunning. Yang Si could not help but shiver. Could it be that he was really Hua Yuan's elder brother who possessed him? Wei Ci shook his head and said seriously, ghosts and gods cannot be trusted. We must believe in science. Believe in the Lord. Yang Si looked at him strangely. Why did this sentence come out of the mouth of a charlatan? Why did it sound so awkward? Yang Si was confused. If it was not the younger brother who possessed him, how could it be explained that there were two completely different Hua Yuan after he lost his mind? One was cowardly, dejected, and bullied. His wife and her lover cheated on him countless times and gave him a pair of cheap children, making him a cheap father for many years. Such a great shame and humiliation, not to mention Hua Yuan who was born in an aristocratic family, any child beggar would not be able to tolerate it. The other one would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, cruel and cunning. He used the power of the barbarians to kill his wife and her lover, and also killed the two children who were with him every day. Don't forget that Hua Yuan also set up a series of plans. He stole the grain stored in Qinzhou from Yuan Xian, deceived Nie Sun, and tricked Huang Song. Yang Si was still thinking about the plot. Han Yu and the others looked at Wei Ci with a strange expression. Wei Ci's story was too detailed, it sounded more like a story to them. Pitiful sigh, lost his mind? Maybe he has two personalities? I didn't expect Hua Yuan to be a psychopath. Lo Siji Lianmeng, this is very likely. Simiran said that Hua Yuan went crazy after his parents died. His uncle and aunt, who had taken away his family's wealth, harbored evil intentions towards Hua Yuan. They even wanted to raise Hua Yuan to become a cripple. Hua Yuan was young and faced with a hostile external environment. Maybe he split his second personality because of this. This personality claimed to be Hua Yuan's biological brother who died young. Hua Yuan imagined that his elder brother would protect him, so the second personality was completely different from the first one. He evolved from a little sheep to a man-eating flower. Tudu Feiqiu, from a little sheep to a man-eating flower. This metaphor is amazing. I double-click 666 for you. Jiang Pengji said, as far as I know, this kind of insanity is extremely difficult to cure. It will worsen over time. Yang Si, even so, Yang Si's words still voiced everyone's confusion. Wei Ci's understanding of Hua Yuan was too detailed. Wei Ci dodged the question expressionlessly. I calculated with my fingers and observed the stars at night. Yang Si could not help but complain, can your reason be any more perfunctory? Who was the one who told him that ghosts and gods couldn't be trusted? Turning around and slapping his own face, Wei Zixiao, you sure are capable. Wei Ci argued with him and said, yes. Yang Si, Han Yu shook his head. He and Wei Ci had known each other for many years. There was indeed something mysterious about Wei Si that others could not fathom. Since the Lord did not ask further, it was obviously harmless. She could just pretend to be deaf and dumb. On the contrary, Yang Si liked to be abused. Even though he knew that there was no result from asking, he still persisted. Jiang Pengji excused the meeting with the excuse that she was tired. Wei Si was caught up by Yang Si as soon as he left the tent. He said wickedly, "Zixiao, why don't you write a novel about Hua Yuan using the name of Layman Zaiki? It will definitely cause a sensation." Wei Si said, "Are you trying to piss him off?" He was so mischievous. Yang Si said, "After listening to this novel, my heart is itching. I always feel that it's not enough. For a novel, after reading a novel, one always felt that it was fresh and wanted to find a similar type to read again to satisfy the need." Wei Si was moved but refused. No matter what, he and Hua Yuan had worked together before. It was too wicked to bully an old colleague like this. Wei Si washed up and was about to rest when a figure sneaked in quietly. When he looked closely, it turned out to be the Lord. "Lord, you are," relying on her good martial arts skills, the Lord always liked to visit her at night. Jiang Pengji said with a hint of jealousy, "About that Hua Yuan, were you familiar with him before?" She was not so familiar with the person who slept beside her. Wei Si's expression wavered a little, and he said slightly unnaturally, "After all, we worked together before." Jiang Pengji half leaned on him. "Zixiao, I'm sad. You actually have something on your mind from me. Did you really not have an affair with Hua Yuan?" Wei Si smiled bitterly and said, "We are both men. The friendship between gentlemen is as indifferent as water. Our relationship is completely different from yours." Although he was not proficient in sweet nothings, Wei Si knew how to pacify the person in front of him. Wei Si did not deliberately hide it. It was just that he did not want others to know about the secret, especially the person in front of him. "If my lord really wants to know, what's the harm in telling me?" Wei Si said. "I treated him like a gentleman's best friend, but he didn't think so." Hua Yuan's madness became more and more serious. One day, after his illness broke out, he claimed to be Hua Yuan's deceased wife. This woman was dissolute and liked young and beautiful scholars. At that time, I was in the prime of my life and my looks were not bad. She often harassed me and refused to give up. I could not stand her harassment. In the face of workplace harassment, Wei Si righteously chose to say no. Hua Yuan's looks were not bad, but he was dressed in colorful women's clothing and wore scary makeup. Even ghosts would be scared to tears by him. It was because of this that Wei Si started to investigate Hua Yuan's past. Coincidentally, the first personality, Hua Yuan, woke up one day. Wei Si used some means to dig out a lot of inside information from him. He pieced the scattered information together into a complete intelligence report. If possible, Wei Si did not want to know more about Hua Yuan. This person was really evil and strange. Jiang Pengji said angrily, "He's so shameless. That's all in the past. Let's not talk about it." Wei Si sighed and said, "At the end of the day, he was just a pitiful person." After Hua Yuan split into elder brother and deceased wife, he also split into his deceased parents and his deceased wife's lover who had cheated on him. A good counselor had gone crazy. Every time he thought of this, Wei Si could not help but sigh. If this person's temperament was normal, he would definitely have a place in this chaotic world. Unfortunately, Wei Si shook his head regretfully. In his previous life, Hua Yuan died a tragic death. He could not bear to see his end. "This person coveted you and harassed you?" Jiang Pengji said, "You still sympathize with him?" "After all, we know each other," Wei Si said. Jiang Pengji said, "Speaking of which, I seem to have been coveting Zixiao and harassing him. Do you hate me?" Chapter 1293. Willing to endure hardship? Jiang Pengji's thin lips curled up slightly. Before Wei Si could react, she hooked her right hand around the back of his neck, leaned forward, and pressed a kiss on his lips. Zixiao is really sweet. She smacked her lips, looking like she was reminiscing. Wei Si's ears heated up and his cheeks flushed red. Even though Wei Si had the experience of his previous life, he was still conservative and introverted. In terms of shamelessness, how could he be Jiang Pengji's opponent? The person in front of him was his nemesis. It was so in his previous life, and it was so in this life. She could defeat him without doing anything. My lord. Wei Si reached out and stabilized her body. He said warmly, "It's getting late. Let's go back and rest first." Jiang Pengji leaned close to his ear. Her warm and moist air hit the base of his ear, causing him to palpitate and tremble. It made him lose control of his mind. Zixiao, your surname was Lu in your previous life, right? Wei Si frowned in surprise and said seriously, "Of course not. Why does my lord have such a question? I suspect that your name was Lu Xiaohui in your previous life." Jiang Pengji teased him with a smile. "If you were an ordinary man, you wouldn't be able to sit still by now." Could it be that her boyfriend power was at its maximum, causing the two of them to take the opposite roles? Should she take the initiative to overwhelm him? It wasn't that she hadn't tried before, but Wei Si's attitude was very resistant. She also abided by the federal law that she couldn't use force on others without permission. Wei Si smiled bitterly. "This is the military camp. Are you going to indulge in sensual pleasures here?" Jiang Pengji was startled. That really wouldn't do. As the lord, she had to set an example and firmly abide by the military rules of the military camp. She couldn't violate any of them, let alone indulge in sensual pleasures. She rolled her eyes and asked, "It's fine as long as we're not in the military camp?" Wei Si smiled bitterly again. The candlelight in the tent swayed. The orange light reflected in his eyes. They looked warm and deep, as if they contained stars. "That won't do. It's not suitable for my lord now." He paused and looked a little embarrassed. "It's not suitable for pregnancy." Jiang Pengji was stunned. She didn't expect Wei Si to reject her repeatedly for this reason. She thought it was because he was naturally shy. The two of them looked at each other for a while. Wei Si seemed to have lost all hope and said, "The world is in chaos and the situation is unstable. If my lord is not careful and becomes pregnant, it will be very inconvenient and the risk will increase. A woman's pregnancy is extremely dangerous. If she is careless and falls into someone else's trap." Wei Si's medical skills were not bad. In his previous life, he had spent a lot of effort to specialize in female gynecology. For stability, he had also learned how to deliver babies. It wasn't that he didn't trust others, but that a woman's pregnancy took 10 months to give birth, so she was especially vulnerable to external harm. Wei Si could not afford to gamble at all. Jiang Pengji scratched her cheek awkwardly with her index finger. She had never thought about it. She did not want to talk about contraceptives in ancient times. In order to ease the awkward atmosphere, she muttered, "Zixiao is really confident in himself." Who didn't know that Wei Si's body was cold because of his childhood experiences? When it came to men, once the word "body cold" was attached to it, outsiders would subconsciously think that they were inferior to normal men in terms of fertility. Even if their bodies could be nurtured well, their yang energy would not be as abundant as others. Even if Wei Si had great self-restraint, he almost broke down when he heard his lord's words. "My lord, no matter how small the possibility is, it doesn't mean that it won't happen. You can't take the risk." Wei Si had been nursing his body for a long time in this life. His condition was definitely much better than in his previous life. He had a son and a daughter in his previous life, so naturally, he wouldn't be without any gains in this life. In addition, the two of them were a few years younger than they were in their previous lives. It was reasonable to say that it was easier for a young and healthy body to conceive. "Don't you know the technique of Qi Huang?" Jiang Pengji said, feeling wronged. "I've learned it for practical use." Wei Si was speechless for a long while. With a red face, he squeezed out a sentence with difficulty. Every medicine is poisonous. A woman's body is different from a man's. Even the slightest damage would be difficult to heal, not to mention the issue of having children. It's fine if you're compassionate, but this method isn't foolproof. If you're not careful and you get pregnant, the fetus you give birth to might be born with congenital deficiencies. Jiang Pengji was speechless. How infuriating. Jiang Pengji's face was as black as ink. Wei Ci hesitated for a while, then he plucked up his courage and stretched out his hand to comfort her back. The more he behaved like this, the angrier Jiang Pengji became. She pushed him down and bit him a few times. Beads of blood appeared on the flesh near his collarbone. Wei Ci was in so much pain that he drew in a breath of cold air. The pain overwhelmed the lust in his body. He could only smile bitterly and pat her on the back, pacifying her. Jiang Pengji was on fire. He was in front of her, yet he couldn't eat her. He was forced to be a sadhu. She smiled bitterly and said, "This is probably self-immolation." Wei Ci didn't dare to interrupt. Instead, he hugged her in silence to calm the burning fire in his heart. His lord wasn't feeling well, but he was actually having a hard time too. Jiang Pengji hugged Wei Ci and ate his tofu for a while. She quietly returned to the main tent. "I'm going to rest. Don't disturb me if there's nothing important," she instructed the soldiers who were guarding the main tent. She went to her bedroom in the tent and opened the system store that she hadn't opened for many years. As she flipped through the pages, her face slowly darkened. The pressure surrounding her became even lower. Ordinary genetically modified rice, clean tap water, iodized salt, salt without iodized salt, soil with medium fertility, dry firewood, soybean oil, vegetable oil, sauces, aged vinegar, stir-fried green tea leaves, snakeskin bags, nail knives, ordinary wound medicine. What kind of lousy things were sold in the system store? After flipping through a few pages, Jiang Pengji was so angry that she rushed to the front of the system. The two systems were so scared that they trembled. "You call yourselves systems? This is called the system store? Don't you have any idea what's going on? You don't even have a BYT. You can't even compare to a snack store. You're so useless. You might as well die. As the trash in the system, don't you think it's too embarrassing for you to live?" She vented all her anger on the system. The two systems were so scared that they were dumbfounded. "You're crazy." System number 2 retorted angrily. "Who said that the system store must sell BYT? What was wrong with them?" She had left them hanging for so many years. The pitiful pair of systems had to eat the energy she fed them regularly every day to survive. They felt wronged even if they didn't eat their fill or starve to death. It was not easy for them to say a few words, but this crazy woman came up and scolded them. "Isn't the bed the battlefield of the live streaming system? Don't you think this thing should exist?" Jiang Pengji mocked and ridiculed them. "As systems, you're so unprofessional. You even want to trick the host into working for you. You deserve to be imprisoned here. Trash." The two systems received critical damage. Damn it, it was great to have the ability to tear the system apart. A soldier would rather be killed than humiliated. Chapter 1294. Bad news from the frontline? The next day, Han Yu was keenly aware that his lord was very angry. Her aura was even gloomier than before. Thinking about it, the only answer he could think of was bad news from the frontline. No, if there was bad news from the frontline, my lord would have summoned us overnight. Yang Si leaned close to him and whispered, "My lord has passed the age of 20. In other words, she has grown up. As an adult, there are always a few days when things go wrong." Yang Si smiled mysteriously and patted Han Yu's shoulder. Han Wenbin joined too late to notice some clues. Han Yu was about to correct him that 20 was used to describe a man and that a woman should be described as young, but he suddenly realized something. "You mean?" Han Yu's face turned gloomy and he scolded, Yang Jing Rong, how dare you lie about my lord? It's not something that can't be said. Sages are also human beings. Yang Si crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, why can't sages talk about things that they can't avoid? Without this, how can the bloodline continue? If you don't say it, who will know that I said it? Han Yu was so angry that he almost laughed. He said, my lord is a woman after all. Isn't it blasphemous to my lord's reputation by saying such things? Yang Si was stunned for a moment and said embarrassedly, didn't I forget? I can only blame my lord for being too heroic and forgetting about this. Han Yu was speechless. He wanted to strangle this scoundrel. Han Yu was exasperated and said, this is related to my lord's reputation. How can you talk nonsense? It was not easy to be a female lord. Yang Si's attitude was so frivolous. If it was spread out, it would be extremely disadvantageous to my lord. Yang Si couldn't defeat Han Yu, so he could only listen to the scolding with his head down. After all, Han Yu was his senior brother, so he endured it. When Han Yu finished scolding him, Yang Si turned to Jiang Nongqin for comfort. Jiang Nongqin said, military advisor Han is thoughtful. You are indeed in the wrong. There is nothing to feel wronged about. My lord's reputation is the most important. Yang Si was speechless. What a heartless woman. Jiang Pengji was very angry, but there were many places for her to vent her anger during the war. Her morale was high, and her soldiers were also encouraged. They looked like they were ready to perish together with the enemy at any time. The entire army did not look dispirited at all. The haze of losing Hu County and Mound River County had been swept away. This was something new. Jiang Pengji gathered everyone for a meeting. A huge sand table was placed in the center of the tent, and the mountains, rivers could be seen on it. Jiang Pengji glanced at the location of Zhanghe County, which was marked with Huang Song's label, and cursed in her mother tongue. Although she spoke softly, many people heard her, but they could not understand her. They couldn't understand it, but the viewers in the live stream knew what it meant. Jiang Pengji had been streaming for almost 10 years. Even if she did not deliberately speak in her mother tongue, she would still occasionally reveal a few words. In the live stream room, Salted Fish had been gathering material for years and barely managed to translate a few pronunciations. Lo Siji Lianmeng, the host has been very irritable lately. Is it because of Bogeo? Jiang Pengji usually restrained herself and avoided using her mother tongue as much as possible, except for one situation, when he was extremely irritable. Under such circumstances, other than cursing, there was no other meaning to using one's mother tongue. Gui Kai Guofengxiu, the streamer is going to win. Huang Song shouldn't have made her so angry, right? She should be scolding the local forces in Hu County for betraying her. I remember that the streamer did not touch them because she cared about Lu Shi's reputation. Who knew that they would take advantage of the streamer's serious illness to betray her? Fortunately, Jiang Pengji was pretending to be sick. If she was really sick, they would have done this and Hu County would have been completely lost. Hu County had a very important strategic significance. If the provisions in Hu County were taken away by Huang Song, he would not have to worry about food this winter. On the contrary, Jiang Pengji's side would be trapped. Even if it was freezing cold, Huang Song could still gather his troops to attack Wanzhou. Jiang Pengji might not be able to defend her side. Thinking of this, it was reasonable for Jiang Pengji to curse the ingrates in Hu County. Little did she know, Jiang Pengji changed the topic and said with a burning gaze, it's getting cold. Let's send Bogeo on his way. Moya Guangxi, the weather is getting cold and yellow? Gu, did you see that? That's my brain. Pepsi Cola, the person above is presumptuous. That's my brain. Qian Yuman, isn't the brain above Coca-Cola? The idle people still did not change the topic, but Han Yu and the others were very reliable. The Sanshan Valley is not a place that is easy to defend and difficult to attack. If Huang Song attacks it with his troops, General Luo, and the others will not be able to defend it for more than a few days. Han Yu said with a serious expression, I asked General Qin Gong to send troops to sneak attack the rear of Huang Song's main force to restrain their troops, but it can only delay them for a while. Jiang Pengji said, I also know that the Sanshan Valley is not a strategic pass. Luo Yu's troops will not be able to defend it. Therefore, we need to end the battle quickly without delay. Looking at the time, Bogeo should have received the news from Qinzhou. He will not sit still. He will either give up Hu County and Zhanghe County and retreat with his troops, or he will go all out and attack the Sanshan Valley and seize the whole of Hu County. Hu County was a hot potato. The terrain also made it easy to attack and difficult to defend. The whole of Hu County only had one line of defense, and they had to send many troops to defend it. However, the ingrates in Hu County were courting death. They cooperated with the mole Huang Song and broke the line of defense in Hu County. Han Yu said, the value of Qinzhou is far less than Hu County. Huang Song will not give up the good situation for Qinzhou. In other words, the possibility of Huang Song leading troops to attack the Sanshan Valley was much higher than the former. If that was the case, Jiang Pengji would definitely send troops to stop Huang Song. She could accept losing the whole of Hu County, but she was afraid that the tens of thousands of elite troops sent to Hu County would also be lost. However, a quick battle was not something that could be won just by leading troops. They needed to think carefully about how to send troops and how to set up the layout. Everyone frowned and discussed for more than 2 hours before they finalized the final plan of attack. After the meeting ended, Jiang Pengji added, we will pacify the 5 countries within 7 years. Bogeo is a force that we must destroy. Han Yu frowned. He did not want his lord to bite off more than she could chew. He hesitated and said, this year, we can conquer Huang Song and Dongqing will basically be unified, but the other 4 countries, Jiang Pengji snorted. Can't we destroy a group of thieves with the strength of a country? Dongqing, Xichang, Nansheng, Beiyuan, and Zhongzhou. The 5 countries were basically divided. Although Dongqing would not be the first to be in chaos, it would be the first to be unified. With all the troops in the country under her control, she did not believe that she could not defeat the neighboring countries that were divided. It was the same principle as making money to start a business. Starting a business was the most difficult to earn $1 million. Making another $1 million was much easier than starting a business from scratch. She spent nearly 7 years to unify Dongqing. Couldn't she destroy the other 4 countries in the remaining 7 years? Han Yu looked calm on the surface, but in fact, his blood was boiling. He had been working for Jiang Pengji for a while. Except for the conversation that persuaded her to surrender, she had never revealed her ambition to invade the other 4 countries. Now she said that she would destroy the other 4 countries within 7 years. Even a rational person like Han Yu could not help but be excited. Chapter 1295. Who didn't know how to brag? But to be able to turn your bragging into reality, that was the real deal. Jiang Pengji had made a bold promise. This year, she would defeat Huang Song. In 7 years, she would pacify the 4 countries. Naturally, she had to put in the corresponding effort. At the moment, the most important thing was to send troops to intercept Huang Song's main force and prevent them from entering the Sanshan Valley. If Hu County was saved, the next battle would be easier. Not only did Jiang Pengji and the others understand this, but Huang Song's people were also well aware of it. However, Jiang Pengji was destined to be Huang Song's nemesis. Before he could recover from the joy of breaking through Hu County's defense line and taking over Zhanghe County, a few pieces of news came from the rear. They struck him like a bolt from the blue. Almost all of his rationality was shattered. Yuan Xin almost killed the military counselor Nie Sun in front of the battle. Yuan Xin easily believed Hua Yuan's suggestion and used the strategy of strengthening the defense and clearing the field. As a result, the grain stored in Qinzhou's granary was stolen by Hua Yuan. Yuan Xin was drunk and violent. He wanted to kill an assistant general who violated military orders. The assistant general was so bold that he conspired with another assistant general to kill Yuanxin. Qinzhou is in dire need of rations. The military counselor Nie Sun reorganized the troops and stopped the enemy in Sangzhou. 4 pieces of news in a row blew Huang Song's mind away. That was not the point. The point was that the 4 pieces of news did not happen at the same time. What did this mean? It meant that someone had deliberately blocked and suppressed the news from the rear. They were deceiving everyone and causing Huang Song to be unable to know the situation of the battle immediately. Huang Song suppressed his surging anger. Fortunately, Yuanxin was dead. If he hadn't died, Huang Song would have drawn his sword and slashed him. He looked at the messenger with a gloomy expression and asked in a hoarse voice, "Who sent you to deliver this news?" The messenger replied, "Military counselor Nie sent me to deliver the news to the Lord as soon as possible." Huang Song asked again, "When did military counselor Nie get injured?" The messenger replied, "About a month and a half ago." Huang Song asked again, "When did General Yuanxin die? When did Qinzhou's rations get cheated?" The messenger was sweating profusely. The rations got cheated half a month after military counselor Nie got injured. 10 days later, General Yuanxin was assassinated. Huang Song was furious. The veins on his forehead were bulging. His eyes were filled with horror. It would only take 10 days to get here from the front line in Qinzhou. Why is the news delayed for 40 to 50 days? Huang Song's anger could not be quelled, and the messenger could only bear the impact of his anger head-on. He was so frightened that he trembled all over, not daring to interrupt. The messenger said, This is because General Yuanxin ordered." He was like a punctured balloon. His anger suddenly dropped from the highest point to the lowest point, and there was a dejected expression between his brows. Huang Song really regretted it now, so much so that his intestines turned green. He said angrily, "I thought he was sincerely remorseful to Qingyun. That's why I gave him a second chance to guard the rear of Qinzhou. I didn't expect him to be so unrepentant. He should, Nie Sun and Yuanxin didn't get along. Even if he did, the two of them wouldn't be able to reconcile. Nie Sun and Yuanxin didn't get along. Even if he did, the two of them wouldn't be able to reach a peaceful ending." His words had come true. Huang Song, on the other hand, had no choice but to give Yuan Xian some face, and took out Yuan Xian that he had hidden away. It wasn't because Huang Song was a father figure. It was because Yuan Xian's youngest son was shot by a stray arrow to protect Huang Song and died. Huang Song remembered this kindness. He wasn't a heartless person. He always remembered Yuan Xian's kindness, so he took good care of Yuan Xian. In the end, alas, he was caught in his own trap. If he had listened to Feng Zhu, Qing Jing, and the others and kept Yuan Xian hidden or separated, he wouldn't be in this situation. Huang Song knew that Yuan Xian was taking advantage of his guilt and his status as his uncle. No one could suppress him except for a few people. But so what? He couldn't just let Yuan Xian go or abandon him just because he liked to target Nie Sun. Before the incident in Qinzhou, Yuan Xian's biggest mistakes were limited to targeting Nie Sun, snitching on him behind his back, and destroying internal unity. Huang Song would at most freeze Yuan Xian for a period of time as punishment. After the incident, he would still use it. Unexpectedly, Yuan Xian didn't say a word and caused big trouble. Not only did he hurt Nie Sun, but he also suppressed the news. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. In the end, Hua Yuan of unknown origin took away the food in Qinzhou. Huang Song told everyone in the tent with a serious face. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect Yuan Xian to be so bold. Qing Jing rubbed his eyebrows. Yuan Xian turned the advantage he had created with great difficulty into a disadvantage. He was really a capable person. He was dead, but the Lord had to clean up the mess because of his stupidity. Qing Jing frowned and thought. A counselor in Huang Song's tent came out and cupped his hands. "My lord," General Yuan Xian is already dead. It's useless to argue about his mistakes now. The most important thing now is to solve the urgent situation. Qinzhou doesn't have enough troops and supplies. Counselor Nia is injured. We don't know how long he can defend. My lord, please make a decision as soon as possible. Should we send troops back to help Qinzhou or abandon it? The counselor's voice trailed off. If they didn't care about Qinzhou, as long as the enemy used the strategy of besieging them, Qinzhou would be finished even if they didn't do anything. Don't forget, there were nearly 1 million ordinary people in Qinzhou. There was still surplus food in the military camp for some time, but millions of people also needed to eat. Not every family had food reserves, and even if they did, there wouldn't be a lot. Many people had to go to the rice merchants regularly to buy rice. The rice merchants bought part of the rice from the people, and the other part from the grain stores in the important towns. The rice bought by the grain stores was usually old rice that had been stored for a year or 2 or 3 years. The price was lower than new rice. It was good enough that the people had something to eat. Why would they be picky about whether the rice was new or old? Yuan Xian had moved all the food from the grain stores. How could they make up for this gap? There was another meaning in the counselor's words. If Huang Song chose to go back to help Qinzhou, he would have to face a food shortage of millions of Dong and the people who lacked food. It was better to abandon it. Abandoning Qinzhou also meant abandoning Nye Sun and the tens of thousands of soldiers stationed there. What should he do? How should he choose? Huang Song's heart wavered. He was like a blind man standing on the edge of a cliff. In front of him was a cliff, and behind him was a fierce tiger. My lord, it's not time to delay. My lord, please make a decision quickly. Everyone tried to persuade him. Huang Song looked at Qing Jing, asking him what he should choose. Qing Jing was silent for a while, then said in a low voice, My lord, please think of the big picture. Chapter 1296. Everyone was well aware of Huang Song's choice. Qing Jing left the main tent with a heavy heart and secretly found the messenger to ask. He felt that something was wrong about the incident in Qinzhou. Yuan Xin had a bad temper for a long time, but he had to be killed at such a critical juncture. The messenger trembled with fear and did not dare to look directly at Qing Jing. He answered whatever Qing Jing asked. Have you investigated Hua Yuan's background? Qing Jing asked in a low voice. Is it possible that he was sent by Wanzhou? Huang Song and Jiang Pengji were in a heated battle. It was too much of a coincidence that Hua Yuan jumped out and swindled millions of Dong of grain. When General Yuan Xin was alive, he had sent men to pursue the stolen rations. Although they didn't manage to catch the culprit, according to intelligence, Hua Yuan was a citizen of Nanxing. This batch of rations was also transported to the south by water. Military advisor Nia investigated it carefully. It was most likely not sent by Wanzhou. Qing Jing frowned slightly and sighed. That's true. If it was Wanzhou's doing, it would have been publicized long ago. Sent south by water? Could it be Nanqing's power? Yang Tao and Jiang Pengji had formed an alliance. Yang Tao could indeed help Jiang Pengji. Qing Jing would never have guessed that Hua Yuan was not Yang Tao's subordinate but Enchui's. Enchui's reputation in Dongqing was very low. It was normal for Qing Jing to not think of him. He asked again, how is military advisor Nye? Can you take it? Nye Sun was a very perceptive person. He should know what would happen to him if the news reached the front lines. Huang Song would definitely abandon Qinzhou. The messenger told the truth. Nye Sun had recuperated for more than a month before he could barely walk. Logically speaking, he still needed to rest, but Yuan Xin had died at such a critical juncture. If Nye Sun did not stand up to take charge, how could the soldiers in Qinzhou resist the ferocious enemy? After Qing Jing heard this, his brows did not relax. Instead, they furrowed even more, leaving deep red wrinkles. Military advisor Nye was injured so badly? If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Qing Jing would not have imagined how severe the injury was. The messenger said, military advisor stayed up for several nights before he was out of danger. He woke up for a while and wrote a will to his wife and daughter. If he was not injured to the point of death, who would write a will to curse him? Qing Jing said, Will? Do you know what it says? The messenger shook his head. He was just a lowly soldier. How could he be qualified to know what was written in the letter? However, General Yuanxin read the contents of the letter before he died. Not long after the letter reached the hands of Counselor Nie's wife and daughter, they led their men north. North? Suddenly, Qing Jing understood something. He could roughly guess the contents of the will. It was most likely an order for his wife and daughter to go north and seek refuge with the Yu clan. He asked, Why didn't you tell the Lord about this? The messenger was stunned and said in astonishment, Counselor Nie didn't say anything. Qing Jing lowered his eyelids to hide the complex emotions that flashed across his eyes. Nie Sun had sent someone to report, but he had left out the detail that he had written a will to his wife and daughter. Was he afraid that the Lord would pursue and suspect him? When he thought of this, Qing Jing asked about the details of Yuan Xian's death in detail. The more he asked, the more shocked he was. Yuan Xian's death, I'm afraid it won't be simple. Even if the commoners were resentful, they would not be able to win against the Thais. Most of them did not have the courage to make a fuss and could only swallow the bitter pill. That old man had not only carried his granddaughter's corpse to the military camp to make a fuss, but he had also been able to maintain his composure during the confrontation and speak clearly and methodically. He did not seem like a commoner, but more like someone had instructed him behind the scenes. Qing Jing raised his hand to press his aching forehead and said in a low voice, You may leave. Be careful when you leave. Don't let anyone see that you've seen me. Qing Jing wanted to hide it, but Huang Song was a suspicious person. He heard that Qing Jing had privately summoned the messenger. This action attracted Huang Song's attention. He summoned the messenger to ask. What did the counselor ask? The messenger recalled carefully and told him everything. After hearing this, Huang Song's expression became a little gloomy. The messenger knelt down in fear and trembled, not even daring to breathe loudly. After a while, he waved his hand and said, Don't say anything that should or shouldn't be said. The messenger retreated with a puzzled face. The next day, Huang Song gathered everyone to discuss the matter of attacking the Three Mountains Valley. Qing Jing keenly noticed that Huang Song was not as hesitant as the day before. This lowly general requests to join the battle. We will definitely attack the Three Mountains Valley within 3 days. There were many generals under Huang Song's command, but most of them were from the Yuan family. Only less than half of them were generals with different surnames. The one who requested to join the battle this time was Yuanxin's eldest son. He took after his father in appearance and was also a fierce and aggressive person when he was young. As soon as he finished speaking, Yuan Chong and a few other generals also stood up and requested to join the battle. The Three Mountains Valley was easy to attack but difficult to defend. Even if the enemy had placed a large number of soldiers here, it would still be difficult to defend. This was a good opportunity to make a contribution. Huang Song was still disgusted by Yuanxin's betrayal and did not want to see anyone related to Yuanxin for the time being. He ignored Yuanxin's eldest son and turned to Yuan Chong. Is Heng Shu confident? Yuan Chong secretly clenched his fists and took a deep breath. He said in a powerful voice, This lowly general is willing to make a military pledge. It seemed that he was very confident. Huang Song secretly nodded, feeling quite pleased. Yuan Chong was his younger brother and fan. The two of them had been good friends when they were young. Yuan Chong was much better than Yuanxin. Yuanxin's eldest son said discontentedly, Heng Shu is still young after all. This battle is of great importance. Please play it safe, my lord. Huang Song retorted expressionlessly, embarrassing Yuanxin's eldest son. Yuan Chong led his troops into battle. The dark formation made the onlookers feel pressured. In the Three Mountains Valley, the war drums thundered. Luo Yu took a deep breath and wiped his weapon with a gloomy expression. It seemed that doing so could calm him down. Meng Hang and Qing Yuan looked at the sand table with a solemn expression. This was not a good place to defend, but they had no other choice. The enemy had the geographical advantage, and they could only fight passively. Fight to the death. We will not take a step back. Luo Yu gripped the long saber in his hand tightly. The polished blade glowed with a cold white light. Meng Heng said, "General Luo, defending to the death is not a good strategy. Even if we use all our men and supplies, defending for 5 days is the limit." The enemy had set up their formation. It was obvious that they would not rest until they were dead. If they fought the enemy to the death, the outcome would be total annihilation. Luo Yu said, "We have already lost Zhanghe district. There is no retreat. If we lose the Three Mountains Valley, the entire Hu County will." Heng is aware of this. Meng Heng's indifferent eyes were as calm as an ancient well. But these tens of thousands of soldiers are elites that my lord has carefully nurtured. General wants them to defend the Three Mountains Valley to the death. This loss is far greater than losing Hu County. Luo Yu stood up abruptly. A hint of struggle flashed across his square face. "What do you mean, military advisor?" Meng Heng said, "Retreat and abandon the valley. Retreat is the best plan." There was a loud bang. Luo Yu was so angry that he smashed the table beside him. Sawdust scattered all over the floor. Military advisor. Retreat and abandon the valley. How could Meng Heng say that? Wasn't this equivalent to handing over the entire Hu County to Huang Song? Chapter 1297. Luo Yu's eyebrows twitched. He said solemnly, "Please elaborate." He must have been blind. He thought Meng Heng was a gentle and kind scholar. He didn't expect him to be so crazy and decisive. No wonder he was Meng Zhan's son. His ruthlessness was inherited. Killing 1,000 enemies while sacrificing 800 men. Perishing together. Meng Heng sneered. Luo Yu's heart skipped a beat. Huang Song attacked Hu County for the food after the autumn harvest. We can burn it. If we can't get it, Huang Song won't get it either. Luo Yu's eyelids twitched. Burn it? Burn his own food? Crazy? Meng Heng said, "Not all of it. We're burning the fields within 100 miles of the Sanshan Valley. If the food was burned, what was the point of Huang Song's attack? He could just cry in Mound River County." Luo Yu looked at Meng Heng with shock in his eyes. His breathing was rapid and heavy, and his eyes were bloodshot. Burning the crops within 100 miles of the fields, how could he bear to do it? In this era, people would sacrifice their lives for a meal. How could he do it? "If you don't make a decision, you'll be in trouble." Meng Heng said coldly, "General Luo, make a decision." Luo Yu squeezed the handle of the knife. His knuckles turned blue from the force. His bones were almost protruding out of his skin. It was obvious how much he was struggling. The choice Meng Heng gave Luo Yu was too difficult. No matter what he chose, Luo Yu couldn't bear to do it. Qing Yuan held his breath and looked at the two with a complicated expression. Is there really no other way? Qing Yuan helped Luo Yu speak his mind. Meng Heng said, "Huang Song will attack the Sanshan Valley with all his strength. We can at most hold on for 5 days. That's at the cost of the lives of all the soldiers. My lord's army is restraining Huang Song's, but Huang Song is avoiding the battle. He'll use the terrain to delay them. It won't be a problem to stall for 10 days to half a month. By then, Hu County will be in Huang Song's hands. Is that what you want to see?" The two were speechless. Luo Yu hung his head in pain. Meng Heng said, "Sacrificing 100 miles of fields in exchange for the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers and half of Hu County. Isn't that worth it?" Luo Yu said, "Advisor. In 2 months, it will be the autumn harvest, Meng Heng said, but we're exhausted after persevering for 5 days. How can we last until the autumn harvest? Since ancient times, wars had only involved seizing other people's territory and food. Who would burn one's own food? After a while, Qing Yuan said, if news of the people burning a year's worth of hard work gets out, Meng Heng asked, isn't there a ready scapegoat? Luo Yu and Qing Yuan were both stunned, not knowing who Meng Heng was referring to. Some people worked with Huang Song from the inside for wealth and glory. Why didn't anyone burn the food and take the opportunity to surrender to Huang Song? Meng Heng said, anyway, they're a bunch of people who are about to die. It's not too much to add another crime to them. Let their deaths be more worthwhile. Both of them were silent. What was the reason for the arson? Anyone with a discerning eye would know that Huang Song attacked Hu County for the food. Which idiot would burn the food as a sign of allegiance? As if he could see the two's doubts, Meng Heng said, it's just burning the fertile fields near the Three-Mountain Valley. We can say that the burning of the fields is to distract our army and mislead us into sending troops to extinguish the fire. This will weaken the defending forces of the Three-Mountain Valley. It's good as long as it makes sense. There was no lack of fallacies and ordinary people who were brainwashed by them. As long as the majority of people believed in alcohol, a minority would naturally choose to remain silent. Has General Luo made a decision? Luo Yu looked dispirited and said in a hoarse voice, if we can survive this battle, I'll personally ask for forgiveness from the Lord. Not only did he fail to defend the territory that the Lord had given him, but he also escaped by burning his own fields. Such an incompetent and prodigal performance made Luo Yu want to find a hole to hide in and never come out again. Huang Song's army came in a menacing manner. They were very ferocious and did not give anyone a chance to breathe. The two armies fought from day to night with the Three Mountains Valley as the boundary. The gate of the pass was smashed by a giant tree once. If it were not for the timely use of dozens of saber carts to block it, they would not have been able to hold on for a day. Everyone was panic-stricken and did not dare to close their eyes at night, afraid that the enemy would take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Luo Yu transferred a few thousand soldiers to disguise themselves as ordinary guards and sneaked out of the Three Mountains Valley in the middle of the night. Because of the war, the people nearby had already packed their belongings and headed north to avoid disaster. The fertile fields were left unguarded, which made it convenient for them to move around. Huang Song and the others did not choose to attack at night. Instead, they let the army rest and build up their strength, because the battle situation during the day determined that the enemy was more nervous than they were and did not dare to sleep the whole night. If they didn't sleep for a whole night, the enemy's physical condition would naturally be inferior to theirs, and they would have the advantage the next day. Based on the current situation, they would be able to take down the Three Mountains Canyon in 3 to 4 days. No matter how strong the enemy was, they were still mortals. It was impossible for them to not sleep for a few days. In the middle of the night, a faint orange light lit up behind the Three Mountains Valley. At first, it was not obvious, and Huang Song and the others did not pay much attention to it. As time passed, the orange light gradually spread and dyed the dark sky with an orange edge. After 2 to 4 hours, Huang Song was woken up by someone. What happened? Huang Song finally managed to fall asleep. Just as he was sleeping soundly, he was woken up by the ruckus outside. He tightened his pajamas and raised his hand to rub his sleepy eyes. Master, something bad has happened. There's a fire. Fire? What fire? Huang Song's mind quivered. He mistakenly thought that the enemy had come to set a fire at night and was so scared that he was completely awake. He grabbed Yuan Chong's hand and asked, "Where's the fire?" Yuan Chong could not explain clearly, so he ran to the observation deck with Huang Song. There was a dazzling line of fire on the horizon in the direction of the Three Mountains Valley. What's that? Huang Song felt like he was dreaming. Why was the enemy's rear on fire? Yuan Chong said, "The enemy's rear is on fire." I don't know who said it. The two looked at each other. At this moment, the enemy's rear was on fire. Huang Song suddenly had the illusion that he was the chosen one. He looked at the fire in the distance and vaguely felt that something was wrong. Huang Song asked, "Where's the location of the fire?" Yuan Chong could not tell him the specifics and could only give him a rough location. Huang Song's mind flashed and he was shocked. He quickly climbed down the observation deck. At this moment, Qing Jing and the others also rushed over. Their faces were frighteningly gloomy. They checked the locations of the Great Universal Geographical Map and were shocked to find that all the locations of the fire were fertile fields. Such a big fire may not be extinguished in 3 to 5 days. They did not know how much grain that was about to ripen had been burned, but they knew that it was not a number they wanted to see. They're crazy. Huang Song's emotions suddenly exploded. He waved his hand and overturned the table. The bamboo slips and documents on the table scattered on the ground, and the table fell to the ground with a dull thud. In the Three Mountains Valley, Luo Yu looked in the direction of the fire and wiped his tears. Chapter 1298. Compared to the back and forth battle in Hu County, the Wanzhou battlefront seemed dull and boring. The person guarding the Wanzhou battlefront was Qiguan Rang, the commander was Fu Wang, and the troops he led were all elites. No matter what tricks Feng Ju used to lure and mislead them, the entire army adopted the safest strategy. It wasn't that Qiguan Rang didn't want to change from defense to offense, but he had Wanzhou behind him. If Hu County fell, they would at most lose a year's harvest. Next year, they would have to tighten their belts. If Wanzhou was lost, then the battlefront would completely collapse. Qiguan Rang knew this, so he didn't dare to slack off. He often deduced the enemy's tactics late into the night, so busy that he even forgot where to put the feather fan in his hand. Yes, that's right. The feather fan that Qiguan Rang never left his hand all year round had finally lost the favor of the main wife. Suddenly hearing that Hu County had fallen, even Fu Wang, the commander, couldn't sit still. Qiguan Rang was still calm and unperturbed. Isn't the advisor worried at all? Of course, Qiguan Rang said. If all of Hu County falls into Huang Song's hands, not only will they get millions of dawn of new grain, but the tens of thousands of elites under the Lord's command will also be lost. However, if we lose Hu County, we still have a chance to win. If we lose Wanzhou, it'll be hard to turn things around. The land of Wanzhou was the culmination of 7 years of his lord's hard work. Hu County's greatest value lay in its grain. Qiguan Rang knew very well which of the two was more important. Fu Wang let out a sigh after hearing this. He put away all his anxiety and nervousness. He seemed to have calmed down, but the aura around him was slightly terrifying. As soon as Fu Wang thought of the local forces in Hu County rebelling against Huang Song, who had backstabbed them in their vitals, causing the defense line in Hu County to fall and the army to have to retreat to the Three Mountains Canyon, he was instantly enraged. He gritted his teeth and said, if the people in Hu County hadn't. Qiguan Rang frowned and looked at a spot on the sand table. He clicked his tongue. Maybe the Lord would be happy to see this. Fu Wang almost exploded in anger. How could the Lord be happy to see betrayal? The Lord seized the opportunity to clean up Chongzhou, but Hu County is not easy to deal with. Qiguan Rang's eyes were cold as he said meaningfully, now that someone is courting death, of course, she doesn't mind them being bolder. If they know their place, who would the Lord kill? Fu Wang furrowed his brows. He had a feeling that Qiguan Rang was implying something. Although the general looked burly and honest on the surface, as if the general was all brawn and no brains, in reality, that was not the case. The scheming on the battlefield was no less than the fighting in the imperial court. A commander capable of commanding hundreds of thousands of soldiers in battle would not be a simple-minded person. Fu Wang probed, why do you say so? Could it be that my lord already had the intention to get rid of those people? If that was the case, Fu Wang was even more puzzled. Other than the stab this time, the forces in Hu Commandery have been very obedient the rest of the time. There is no reason for the Lord to want to kill them so early on. Qi Guanrang was startled for a moment, then smiled faintly. Perhaps. How can an outsider guess the Lord's thoughts? Fu Wang choked on his words. Qi Guanrang was pretending to be deaf and mute. Qi Guanrang obviously knew something but refused to say it. This made Fu Wang's heart itch, but Qi Guanrang was tight-lipped and refused to reveal anything. Qi Guanrang replied, "It's not a good thing to know too much." As soon as Fu Wang heard this, he knew that he should not continue to be curious. Even the cautious Qi Guanrang said so it must not be a small matter. He decisively changed the topic to his opponent, Feng Zhu. If Qi Guanrang's steady style was a shield, then Feng Zhu was a sharp spear, extremely aggressive and deceptive. Fu Wang occasionally lamented that Feng Zhu had followed the wrong person to follow Huang Song. His temperament was more like the Lord's. If Huayu was not in Sangzhou but here, it would be interesting for the brothers to fight. Qi Guanrang said, "My lord deliberately transferred Huayu to Sangzhou to avoid the brothers from killing each other." Fu Wang made a sound of surprise. Aren't the brothers Qing Sun and Qing Yu on a warning? Qi Guanrang said, "Old Master Feng Ren is old and can't take the stimulation. Qing Sun's death caused Qing Qing to become seriously ill. Many famous doctors said that he could not hold on any longer. If the same situation happened again, if old Master Feng Ren was also sick, he might not have the luck to recover." Fu Wang said, "If that's the case, no wonder the Lord transferred the troops to Hu Commandery and avoided Nye Sun. Is it the same reason?" Qi Guanrang nodded. "It's rare for my lord to be so considerate." Fu Wang stretched and perked up. "The enemy hasn't moved for 2 days. It doesn't look normal." Feng Zhu led troops to attack Wanzhou, but they were stopped by Fu Wang and Qi Guanrang. The two sides were in a stalemate. A while ago, the battle was quite fierce, but these 2 days, it had become uncharacteristically quiet. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Fu Wang felt that Feng Zhu was definitely up to something. Qi Guanrang said, "If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. As long as something doesn't happen in Wanzhou, what tricks can he play?" The main theme of the battlefront in Wanzhou was defense. They absolutely could not push the battlefield into Wanzhou. This was the bottom line that the Lord had told them. It was best if Feng Zhu was willing to stop for a while. Qi Guanrang could take the time to make other arrangements. Reality proved that Feng Zhu was a restless person. How could he waste his limited time on meaningless things? Fu Wang had a brainwave and said with a smile, "What if Feng Zhu instigates the Feng family to defect?" "General Fu, do you know how long the Feng family has been around for?" Qi Guanrang secretly rolled his eyes and chuckled. "Feng Zhu instigates the Feng family to change their stance, but the premise is that the Lord dies and Wanzhou and Hu County fall into Huang Song's hands. Only by achieving this premise can Feng Zhu have a chance. The Feng family has gone through several dynasties and several troubled times. If they don't even have the ability to protect themselves, how could they have survived until now? The Feng family of Shangyang was not something that the upstarts in Hu County could compare to." Fu Wang asked, "What if Feng Zhu forged a letter to force the Feng family?" Qi Guanrang said, "That's even more impossible. No matter how rebellious Feng Zhu is, he won't be so cruel as to drag the entire Feng family into a situation of eternal damnation. You also know the Lord's temperament. She won't easily let go of those who betray her. No matter how stupid Feng Zhu is, he won't do that. If he dares to do that, old Master Feng Ren will be the first to step forward and strike Feng Zhu out of the family tree, or even kill family in the name of righteousness." Fu Wang nodded as he listened. Not long after the two of them ended this topic, they were slapped in the face. "Report, we've caught a suspicious spy." Fu Wang waved his hand and said, "Spy? Bring the person in." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 soldiers escorted a woman in a summer gown into the room. The woman struggled as she walked. Fu Wang said, "Is this a spy?" The woman looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. Her black hair was tied up in a woman's bun, revealing her clean neck and collarbone. Her figure was plump, and her skin was delicate and rosy, like a ripe peach. She was also very good-looking, and her eyes were charming and moving, as if they could suck in a person's soul. Fu Wang took a look and was stunned for a moment, but he came to his senses the next moment. Chapter 1299. One of the patrolling soldiers had been holding back his peace so much that he begged his colleagues to switch shifts and secretly went to a remote place to relieve himself. Just as he was feeling good, he saw this strange woman. She looked strange and attracted the attention of the soldier. Based on the principle that it was better to catch 1,000 wrong people than to let one go, the soldier reported the news. The woman was very strange. Anyone who met her eyes would be so mesmerized that they couldn't tell north from south. They would do whatever she said. The soldiers originally thought they had caught the wrong person, but seeing this strange situation, they had to catch the woman no matter what. After a lot of trouble, they finally caught the woman. Fu Wang sneered and looked at the uneasy deputy general. Wild fox. I think you guys have been dry for too long. Everything looks like a fairy. He had high standards. How could someone so ugly be called a fairy? Ignorant. The deputy general was embarrassed. He also knew that this woman didn't look like a spy, but she was indeed abnormal. He had even found evidence. General, this is the letter we received from this person. The deputy general handed it over. Seeing this, the woman's eyes widened and she struggled even more violently. This woman was stronger than an ordinary man. 2 adult soldiers couldn't hold her down at all. They needed another to subdue her. Fu Wang took the letter. There was still wax on it. He opened the wax and took out the letter inside. His fingers held the corner of the letter and shook it. After unfolding it, he read 10 lines at a glance. When Fu Wang read the letter, Qiguan Rang was squinting and yawning. He hadn't had much rest for several days and was easily sleepy during the day. General Fu, what's wrong? Fu Wang looked at the woman and handed the letter to Qiguan Rang in disbelief. He lowered his voice and said, Counselor, take a look at this. Qiguan Rang didn't understand. What's written on it? After reading it, Fu Wang took out the folded paper from the envelope. And this? Qiguan Rang knew at a glance that the paper was a detailed topographic map of Wanzhou, as well as the distribution of troops in various places. In this era, maps were not easy to draw. Detailed and accurate maps could even be kept as top secrets. The topographic map of Wanzhou was naturally the most important war secret. It wouldn't be easily revealed. The map in front of him was far more detailed than the maps Qiguan Rang knew. If it fell into the hands of the enemy, the consequences would be unimaginable. Apart from the map, there was also the letter. It was a letter from Feng Yan to Feng Zhu. Who was Feng Gui? The current head of the Feng clan, Feng Zhu's elder brother. Qiguan Rang had just said that it was impossible for the Feng family to be instigated by Feng Zhu. Immediately after that, there was a spy carrying irrefutable evidence of collaboration with the enemy. What a slap in the face. Fu Wang looked at Qiguan Rang with a strange expression. Qiguan Rang frowned and read the letter over and over again. Where is he? Qiguan Rang asked. Fu Wang raised his hand and pointed at the woman. Here, but this woman's eyes are indeed a little strange. Counselor, you must be careful. Qiguan Rang took 2 steps forward. The woman lowered her head when he approached and did not struggle as violently as before. Looking at the woman, Qiguan Rang raised an eyebrow and lifted her chin, forcing her to lift her head. Fu Wang, incredible, incredible. Qiguan Rang's brows relaxed. He asked in surprise, It's you? The woman subconsciously shrank her shoulders, avoiding Qiguan Rang's direct gaze. Fu Wang asked, Do you know her? Could it be that this woman was an old flame of the counselor's? Qiguan Rang did not pay attention to Fu Wang's thoughts. We've met a few times, but I haven't seen her in recent years. There were a total of 4 maids close to the Lord. One was Lady Xuanmei, who had been betrothed to Xiaoyu by the Lord. The other was Jiang Xiaowei, who had also been the Lord's maid. The third was Lady Huijun, whom General Fu should be very familiar with. The fourth is the person in front of you. Lady Takshu. When Fu Wang joined Wanzhou, Takshu had already been ostracized by Jiang Pengji and was later sent to Chongzhou. Therefore, Fu Wang had never seen Takshu before. Fu Wang was surprised. She's the Lord's maid? Yes, I haven't heard any news of her in years. I didn't expect to see her here. But why, even if Takshu was no longer the Lord's maid, the Lord would not neglect Takshu based on their previous relationship as a servant. Even if she was not rich, it would not be a problem for her to be content with a little bit of wealth. If Takshu betrayed the Lord, she would be betraying her master. Who would trust her? Qiguan Rang folded the letter and said lightly, "Keep this person in custody and let the Lord deal with her. It's not convenient for us to do anything." Fu Wang hesitantly pointed at the letter in Qiguan Rang's hand. "This woman is easy to deal with. Then this letter and map. If the Feng family betrays the Lord, Wanzhou will be the next county. This is irrefutable evidence. If the evidence is proven to be real, will the Lord let the Feng family go?" Hearing Fu Wang's voice, Takshu became nervous. She held her breath and waited for Qiguan Rang's reaction. Qiguan Rang said, "How can we convict the Feng family based on a letter whose authenticity is unknown? Even if the letter is real, if we attack the Feng family now, won't we be forcing the Feng family to rebel in advance and forcing Huayu, who is at the front lines, to make a choice between the family and the Lord?" Fu Wang wanted to say something, but Qiguan Rang gestured for him to detain Takshu. "General Fu, we can't be too hasty." Qiguan Rang smiled. "Don't you think that Lady Takshu is really strange?" Fu Wang nodded. "She is indeed a little strange." Qiguan Rang said, "This matter involves too many people. It's better to suppress it first. This matter concerns the Feng family's position. We have to be more cautious." Qiguan Rang shook his head. "The Feng family is easy to deal with, but I'm afraid it will cause the Lord and the old master to fall out." Fu Wang was shocked. The Lord and the old master. What does this have to do with them? Qiguan Rang explained to him, Takshu was the Lord's maid in the early years, but she was personally chosen by the old master. The Lord sent Takshu to Chongzhou to send her back to the old master's side. Based on this relationship, does Takshu and the Feng family have anything to do with each other? They had nothing to do with each other. Even if the Feng family was really muddle-headed, the messenger should not have been Takshu. This person's relationship was too inexplicable. Fu Wang immediately understood and felt that things were getting tricky. Qiguan Rang thought about it and wrote a letter to Feng Gui, who was at the back of Wanzhou, briefly explaining the situation. No matter what, this matter could not be hidden from the Feng family. If the Feng family had been framed, Feng Gui would rush over to explain as soon as he found out. If it was not framed, the Feng family would not dare to act rashly for a while. Of course, the possibility of the Feng family being framed was almost 100% unless Feng Gui was kicked in the head by a donkey to betray them. At this moment, Feng Gui was responding to his father's call to send his 2 legitimate sons to the Golden Scale Academy. Unsurprisingly, the next generation of the Feng family would be handed over to one of these 2 children. This indirectly expressed the Feng family's attitude. Chapter 1300. Feng Gui immediately packed his things and led his men to the front lines. Xiangyang district wasn't very far from the front line. It would only take 3 to 5 days to travel at top speed. Feng Gui arrived in no time. When Qiguan Rang heard of Feng Gui's visit, he couldn't help but curl his lips. It looked like his judgment was correct. The Feng family had not betrayed them. After the 2 of them exchanged pleasantries, Feng Gui got straight to the point and explained his purpose for coming. Qiguan Rang took out the letter and handed it to him. Qiguan Rang said, "This letter was found on the spy's body." Feng Gui carefully took it and glanced at it. His eyes widened in shock. How could this handwriting? The handwriting on the paper was clearly his, and some of the words were written in the same way. Those who were familiar with him would not mistake it. Feng Gui put down the letter and said honestly, "To tell you the truth, this letter was definitely not written by me. However, the person who wrote it was very skilled. Even I was fooled. If it wasn't for the fact that the content of the letter was so horrifying, would have suspected when I had written such a letter." Since even Feng Gui himself had said so, it was clear to see how well the forgery of this letter was done. It was enough to pass off as genuine. Qiguan Rang said, "When I first read the letter, I was shocked. After thinking about it carefully, I felt that something was wrong. There must be a villain behind this. Clan leader Feng, why don't you go back and check the people around you? I don't think there are many people who are familiar with clan leaders' writing habits." Feng Gui thanked Qiguan Rang sincerely. His trust had saved the Feng family from an undeserved calamity. If this matter reached Jiang Pengji's ears, she did not know what kind of disaster it would cause. The Feng family had been keeping a low profile all these years, but that didn't mean they didn't fight. There were too many changes in power in this chaotic world. Who could guarantee that a person who was in the limelight today would not be beheaded tomorrow? The Feng family was cautious in doing things. Even the sides they stood on were ambiguous. How could they openly communicate with Feng Ju to decide their stand? At present, the Feng family thought more highly of Jiang Pengji and had high hopes for Feng Jin. As long as Feng Jin had a firm foothold with Jiang Pengji and didn't lose her trust, would the Feng family have to worry about not having opportunities to develop in the future? How could the Feng family give up their principles and change their stance to Huang Song just because of Feng Ju? Just by thinking about it, one could tell that it was fake. It was just a setup by someone with ulterior motives. Feng Gui nodded his head solemnly in agreement. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, he didn't even dare to ask about his third brother, Feng Ju. Qiguan Rang tried to sound them out again without batting an eyelid. He was only relieved when he confirmed that the Feng family was not a suspect. After Feng Gui left, Qiguan Rang called a few more people over and asked, "Is there anything strange about that woman?" Takshu was under strict supervision, but this woman's eyes were evil. Her pair of charming eyes could make ordinary people forget themselves. Those who were not strong-willed could easily be instigated by her. In order to prevent Takshu from escaping, Qiguan Rang ordered his men to build a small black house with green bricks. After they threw Takshu in, they sealed the exit, leaving only a small ventilation hole and a small door for food delivery. Even so, Qiguan Rang was still worried. He sent people to monitor Takshu in 3 shifts a day. The soldier reported, "There's nothing unusual." Qiguan Rang asked, "Nothing unusual?" He personally went over to interrogate her, but Takshu's reaction was cold. She had a cold and uncooperative attitude. "Lady Takshu, you have a master-servant relationship with our lord. If you encounter any difficulties, you can tell us. Won't our lord uphold justice for you?" Qiguan Rang tried to persuade Takshu. "This place is very safe. No one can threaten you." "You can." Takshu was not sure what he said. She snickered and said, "What master-servant relationship? That's a demon." Qiguan Rang was stunned. His expression darkened. He had given her face, but she did not take it. She had slandered his lord in front of him. Who gave her the courage? Takshu's voice suddenly rose. "The real Lu Shi has been possessed long ago. Now, this is just a demon who has thrown the world into chaos." Qiguan Rang's eyes darkened. He raised his right hand and waved his feather fan, indicating for the soldiers beside him to retreat. If they knew too much, they would die too quickly. Qiguan Rang said in a low voice, "A man does not speak of strange powers and gods. What possessed demon? Lady Takshu's betrayal of her former lord is already a crime worthy of death. Now, you are splashing dirty water on your former lord. This cannot wash away your sins. If you still want to live, you'd better confess obediently." Don't play any tricks. Takshu shrieked, the real Lu Shi has died long ago. Now, this is a demon who has thrown the world into chaos. Ever since she's possessed, she has brought war wherever she goes. The earthquake in Shangjing was also caused by her theft of the nation's destiny. You're helping the evildoer, you'll die a horrible death. Qiguan Rang clenched his fists. The handle of the feather fan in his hand was almost broken. Takshu seemed to have regained her rationality. She snickered and said, how much do you know about Lu Shi? I'm her personal servant. I know everything about her since she was young. Lu Shi is introverted and docile. She doesn't even dare to kill a mosquito, let alone kill a person. The real Lu Shi has been mistakenly killed by bandits a long time ago. Now, this demon is merely a dove occupying a magpie's nest and causing wars and massacres. Qiguan Rang did not speak. Takshu continued, that demon is extremely terrifying. She possessed someone else's body, stole someone else's family, and used Lu Shi's identity to do whatever she wants. I hate it. I hate it so much that I can't expose this demon. She even dared to plot for the destiny of the world. Those who are not of the same race are bound to have different intentions. You guys should be careful. Who knows, one day, she might not be able to hold back and show her fangs and kill all of you. Qiguan Rang said, there's no evidence. Takshu smiled coquettishly and said casually, if I remember correctly, Mr. Qiguan Rang is the son-in-law of teacher Wei Yuan. Haven't you heard him talk about what kind of person Lu Shi used to be? Wei Yuan was Lu Shi's teacher. What I said could be false. Could your father-in-law's words be fake? You've all been deceived by her. She's the demon who incited chaos in the world. Even though the saints did not speak of strange powers and gods, the ancients were still very superstitious. Otherwise, the emperor would not have used divine authority to fool the people. The 5 countries in the world had collapsed one after another, and there were endless wars. If ordinary people heard Takshu's words, they might not believe it. Who was Qiguan Rang? He was a man that the audience called Big Boss. How could he be brainwashed? It was ridiculous to blame the war and chaos on a demon. So what if Lu Shi was not the current lord? From the beginning to the end, the only person he regarded as a close friend was the current lord. You're more like a demon, aren't you? Qiguan Rang said in a low voice, it's a pity that your ability to bewitch people's hearts is not good enough. Since you blamed the war and chaos on one person, that's the biggest flaw. If you have the time, learn well. Don't come out and show off your half-baked skills. Takshu was extremely embarrassed by Qiguan Rang's mockery. She's really a demon who possessed someone else's body. Takshu said, old master knows that too. That's why he's been so distant from her all these years. Chapter 1301. Takshu's eyes flashed with horror, but Qiguan Rang could not see it as she was in the dark room. Are you really not afraid that she is a demon who has possessed a body? In terms of eloquence, of course, Takshu was no match for Qiguan Rang. She simply did not want to humiliate herself. She could only think of another way. Let's not talk about whether he's a demon or not. Why should I question my lord just because of the one-sided words of a maidservant who abandoned her master? Qiguan Rang asked straightforwardly. Our lord is Rang's best friend. Who are you? You're just a maid who abandoned her master. On one side was the lord, and on the other was a maid who abandoned her master. Even a fool would know how to choose. Takshu, who was in the dark room, clenched her fists. Qiguan Rang's reaction was a blow to her. So what if she is a demon? Qiguan Rang said coldly. This only proves that humans are more chilling than demons. What was war? War was an act of extreme violence initiated by humans for their own or group interests. They reshuffled the cards and distributed resources through war. In the end, was it not the greed and desire of humans? Qiguan Rang had known Jiang Pengji for almost 10 years. In the past 10 years, he did not see her seek anything for herself. Instead, she had been contributing. If all the demons in the world were like that, would there still be war in the world? It would have become a paradise in the human world. Qiguan Rang said again, compared to my lord, don't you think that you and the people behind you are more like evil spirits who bring disaster to the human world? Takshu seemed to be provoked and retorted angrily. Fool, the one I believe in is the real God who saves the world. The God you speak of is the one who hides in the side and secretly plots against my lord but does not dare to appear in the open? Since he is God, why doesn't he use his supernatural powers to send down rain and win over believers? Does God also need to hide and not dare to show himself? Qiguan Rang sneered. My lord has never hidden her identity. If she is really a demon, why didn't any powerful people come forward to subdue her? Isn't it their duty to kill demons and devils? Comparing the two, isn't it obvious who is more shameful and who is the evil one? Takshu was speechless. She could not explain Qiguan Rang's continuous questioning. Could it be that Jiang Pengji, the demon, was so powerful that the god could only avoid her and secretly persuade the innocent people not to be bewitched by her? Qiguan Rang laughed when he heard that Takshu did not respond. Do you know what you're doing? If the topographic map in your hands falls into Feng Zhu's hands, Wanzhou, where he has lived and worked in peace and contentment for the past 6 or 7 years, will be obliterated and trampled by iron hooves. No matter how disciplined Huang Song's troops were, how could they guarantee that they would not disturb or injure the people? You say that you are gods, but the things you do are no different from evil spirits. Bewitching Qiguan Rang was obviously a stupid move, because this person saw things more clearly than anyone else. How do you mortals know the will of God? For the sake of peace in the future, what's the harm in sacrificing a few mortals? On the contrary, fools like you have been adopted by the evildoers' small favors. You're simply too stupid. Takshu sneered. There was a hint of madness in her voice. Let's wait and see. A demon will always be a demon. One day, you'll regret what you said today. I'll be waiting. Qiguan Rang flicked his sleeves and left. He sent more men to keep an eye on Takshu and instructed the guards to ignore her crazy words. He could not be bewitched by Takshu, but it did not mean that ordinary guards were immune. This woman was a little strange. After returning, Qiguan Rang immediately wrote a long letter to Jiang Pengji, telling her in detail about Takshu's situation. Jiang Pengji did not know that something had happened behind her. She first learned about Meng Heng and the others' heroic act of burning hundreds of miles of fertile farmland. When she received the news, Jiang Pengji was leading her troops to fight with Huang Song's troops in Hu County. Just as she thought, Huang Song's troops used the tactic of delaying, harassing and sending troops to obstruct them. They never confronted them head-on. Therefore, there was not much progress on Jiang Pengji's side for 2 or 3 days in a row. Seeing that the Sanshan Valley was about to be lost, she was extremely irritated. The most obvious manifestation was that none of the enemies who fell into her hands had a complete corpse. Yang Si did not dare to argue in front of her. If Wei Ci had not remembered to give her special treatment every day, Jiang Pengji would have suffocated from holding her anger. They were careful not to offend her, but the salted fish in the streaming room did not have this worry. He said what he wanted and complained what he wanted. Not only did he not avoid it, but he repeatedly mentioned it in the bullet screen of the streaming room. Ting Feng Chui Shui Gao, I'm so angry. I was pressed to the ground to wipe the floor tiles while playing games. I feel so aggrieved while watching the streaming. Jiang Pengji was in a hurry to rescue the Sanshan Valley. She was in a hurry, but she was harassed and delayed by the enemy. It was very annoying. It was as annoying as being hit with various deceleration and immobilization debuffs in a game when you were in a hurry to save your teammates. Shizuo Jujiazi, guess the game and profession based on the ID. I sympathize with the person above. You beggar Yueqiang, I feel the same. The more I watch, the more anxious I get. I had the urge to stuff the Maserati in the garage into the screen of the streaming room, pressed the streamer to sit in the driver's seat and raced to the Sanshan Valley. Relying on the 2 legs of a human and the 4 legs of a horse, coupled with the constant harassment of the enemy, when the streamer arrived, the corpses of Meng Heng's cousin would have rotted to the point of oozing corpse oil, right? Jianji Lianmu, double-click 666. The person above is so rich. Pengji Chioa, I have to remind you seriously, can the chassis of the Maserati withstand this kind of road? 850,000 salted fish gathered together. You can't expect them to not go astray. Often, the topic will go astray. Jiang Pengji felt annoyed just by looking at them. She simply turned off the bullet screen in the streaming room. Out of sight, out of mind. At that moment, a piece of news that was neither good nor bad came. A fire broke out near the Sanshan Valley. The fire spread and burned countless fertile fields. Fertile fields were burned? Jiang Pengji was surprised. How much was burned? The scout said, it said that the fire has been burning for 3 days and 3 nights. The losses are incalculable. Jiang Pengji knew that the fire was man-made. Meng Heng and the others had set it on purpose. Yang Si seemed to be mumbling, but he was actually speaking up for Meng Heng and the others. He said, we can't protect the grain, but we can't let Huang Song and the others take advantage of it. We have no choice. If Huang Song gets the fertile fields, he won't have to worry about the grain for the next year during the autumn harvest in 2 months. Huang Song had made Hu County the 2nd place to fight for. Wasn't it for Hu County's grain? They were about to conquer the Sanshan Valley, but Meng Heng and the others did this. Yang Si was distressed about the grain and Huang Song at the same time. First, Yuan Xian was cheated by Hua Yuan of millions of grains. Then, Meng Heng cruelly burned hundreds of miles of fertile fields. They were really unlucky. Huang Song was speechless. Chapter 1302. Just as Meng Heng expected, the value of the grain to Jiang Pengji was far less than the elite troops she had trained with a lot of money. The grain could be replanted and harvested once a year at most. Who would she ask for the people if they were gone? It would take her at least 17 or 18 years to give birth to a child and raise the child to an age where he could fight a war. Jiang Pengji was considered wealthy. All the grain depots had prepared grain reserves for special periods. It would not be a problem to live frugally for a year. If the loss of the grain could be exchanged for their safety, then so be it. She could afford it. That was the confidence of a rich and powerful tyrant. She did not lack money or grain, she only lacked people. Everyone could guess what Jiang Pengji was thinking, but they were still worried that their lord would vent her anger on Meng Heng and the others. Regardless of the process, the result was that Meng Heng and the others lost Zhanghe County, burned countless fertile fields, and destroyed millions of autumn grain. If the Lord really wanted to hold them accountable, Meng Heng and the others were not innocent. Han Yu thought for a while, but he kept a straight face. He stood up and said, "Congratulations, my lord." "Congratulations?" Jiang Pengji supported her chin with her hands and turned to look at him. She frowned and said, "Why? What's there to congratulate?" The current situation was not bad, but it was not good either. Being forced by the enemy to burn hundreds of miles of fertile fields would not only hurt the enemy, but also hurt her own heart. Why was she happy? Jiang Pengji had seen 2 little tricks. Those who dared to say, "Congratulations," at times like this must be bluffed. She was not familiar with this kind of trick, but the salted fish in the streaming room were very familiar with it. The salted fishes sat on the small stools and knocked on their bowls and chopsticks, waiting for Han Yu to reveal the riddle. Han Yu did not disappoint them. He analyzed in a deep voice. Huang Song divided his troops to attack Hu County. His purpose was to get the autumn grain that was about to ripen in Hu County. With the Sanshan Valley as the boundary, the fire continued for several days. Countless fertile fields were burned down. Huang Song spent a lot of energy but only managed to get Zhanghe County. If Huang Song still insisted on attacking the Sanshan Valley, What else could he gain other than venting his anger? There were people in history who mobilized a large number of troops for the sake of personal feelings, but they were few and far between. Most of them did not end well. The battlefield was like a shopping mall. In the beginning, one would use up all their resources to fight, but after the battle was over, the spoils of war would be the harvest. If the value of the spoils of war was far less than the resources paid for the war, then they would not be able to make ends meet, and no matter how big their family business was, they would still go bankrupt. The question was Huang Song's family business big? Could this family business support Huang Song to attack a territory that had already lost its value? The answer was no. Jiang Pengji knitted her brows and said, based on Bogeo's character, he won't make a losing deal. If Qinzhou had not been harmed by Jiang Pengji and Hua Yuan, Huang Song might have sent troops to vent his anger. Now, he could only plan carefully. If the waves did not rise, they would calm them down. From this point of view, Meng Heng and the others were completely safe, because Huang Song had no extra energy to fight them. Han Yu said, Huang Song's vitality has been greatly damaged. Behind him, Qinzhou is in dire straits, and there's no progress in attacking Wanzhou. In Hu County, there's only Zhanghe County left. It's almost a complete collapse. There's only one way for him to turn the situation around, to switch from offense to defense. Wait. Wait? Wait for what? Jiang Pengji thought for a while and asked tentatively, wait for the autumn harvest. Harvest the autumn grain in Zhanghe County? Zhanghe County was quite a large area, and its geographical location was close to the man-made river. It was also the place that produced the most grain in Hu County. According to the statistics of previous years, there could be around 3 million don of grain. With the grain, the morale of the army could be stabilized, and they wouldn't have to worry about the lack of grain in winter. Huang Song would never give up on Zhanghe County. Han Yu nodded and said with certainty, yes, wait for the autumn harvest. He needs the autumn grain to revitalize the whole chessboard, but we don't. The situation of the war had changed several times, and Huang Song's life was tied to Zhanghe County. The autumn grain was crucial. For Huang Song, it was something that could prolong his life, but for Jiang Pengji, it was of little value. At this moment, it was Huang Song's turn to be on the defensive. Jiang Pengji understood what Han Yu meant, and some malice flashed in her eyes. Huang Song, who was in the distance, suddenly shivered. She smiled and said, Wenbin, you are right. This is indeed a good thing. Not only should I not punish Shizhou, but I should also reward him. Han Yu's face stiffened. He only came out to put in a good word for Meng Heng, not to help him take credit. There was no need to blame him. The conversation between the two was short, and many viewers in the streaming room couldn't understand it. The turn of events happened without warning. At this time, it was the Chinese class representative's turn. Enchanting, isn't it easy to understand? The current situation is not in Huang Song's favor. To use a game analogy, he is being hit by bullets from all directions, and he can only survive. He can only rely on the bandage in Zhanghe County to recover his health. Only then can he have a chance to kill the streamer. After a round of fierce fighting, the streamer has taken the initiative of the battle from Huang Song. Taking the initiative means taking a certain advantage. Now the streamer can either stabilize the situation and find a chance to give Huang Song a fatal blow, or take the initiative to attack and beat Huang Song until he has no chance to use the bandage. Saying Jean Lubu, there is another option, which is to burn the bandage in Huang Song's hand. After the analysis of the Chinese class representative, the idle people finally figured out the situation. However, what the hell is burning the bandage? It's not enough to burn 100 miles of fertile farmland, but also to burn Zhanghe County. Jiang Pengji, why not? When Huang Song learned that Meng Heng and the others had set fire to the farmland, he was so angry that he couldn't sleep for the whole night. His heart was burning with anger and all kinds of grievances. An emoticon could perfectly describe his current mood. I can't hold back my tears. I can't stand it anymore. Wow. JPG, however, Huang Song was a man who didn't easily shed tears. No matter how many tears he had to hold them back. The more he held them back, the more uncomfortable he felt. He was so angry that he lost his mind. He ordered Yuan Chong to lead the troops to attack the Sanshan Valley. Even if the land behind the Sanshan Valley was worthless, he still wanted to get back at them. Before the troops could accomplish their mission, the scouts in the rear caught a group of suspicious people, which scared Huang Song so much that he instantly regained his senses. The group of people were disguised as ordinary merchants, but they had hidden flint, black oil, and bales of dry firewood on the cart. When the patrolling soldiers found them, they were secretly smearing the black oil on the firewood and preparing to ignite the wheat field. The smell of the black oil was strong, and the patrolling soldiers followed the smell to find them. If not for the patrolling soldiers' sensitive noses and timely discovery, Zhanghe County might have been burned. Once the black oil was ignited, it was not easy to extinguish it. Hundreds of years ago, the ancestors of the northern borderline, the Qiangu tribe, built the Rattan Armor Army. They were burned to death by Prime Minister Huangfu with the black oil. When Huang Song learned of this, he immediately ordered a retreat. He couldn't afford to offend them. Lu Lanting's men were all crazy. Chapter 1303. Huang Song didn't know if Meng Heng was addicted to burning, but he didn't dare to let his guard down. Meng Heng was indeed Meng Zhan's son and Lu Shi's cousin. He was ruthless to his enemies and to himself. Huang Song was terrified. He sent a large number of troops to patrol every day to prevent suspicious people from burning the wheat fields. Jiang Pengji had a big family business and was very generous. He couldn't afford to let his subordinates burn millions of acres of fertile land. He came back to his senses and explained the pros and cons in detail to Qingjing and Huang Song. Qingjing sighed and could only suppress the thought of venting his anger. When the autumn harvest was over, he wouldn't have to worry anymore. Before that, he had to bear with it. The originally tense atmosphere calmed down. Other than training every day, it was the repetitive patrolling and checking tasks. Not everyone liked boring tasks. Someone couldn't bear it anymore. Yuan Chong finished his training and noticed a familiar figure on the drill ground. His heart skipped a beat and he had a bad feeling. It was Yuan Xian's eldest son, Yuan Kuang. Yuan Chong hesitated for a while and took the initiative to greet him. He didn't want Yuan Kuang to accuse him of being rude and arrogant. Yuan Kuang's face was gloomy and his eyes were burning. He didn't look friendly. Yuan Chong sighed in his heart. He finally understood the grievances of military advisor Nie Sun. Nie Sun was strangely bitten by the mad dog Yuan Xian. He was strangely bitten by the mad dog Yuan Kuang. The father and son were poisonous. Yuan Kuang took the initiative to challenge him. The weather is nice today. Why don't you practice with me? Yuan Chong felt uneasy. He didn't want to accept the challenge, but he couldn't embarrass his opponent in public. Okay. Cousin, please. Although they were cousins, in reality, the two of them were already separated from each other. Their relationship was not close, and they did not speak much in the past. Yuan Kuang took after his father. Ever since he was young, he was always competitive and unwilling to admit defeat. When he was young, he was also fierce and aggressive. Yuan Chong usually took a detour around the other party, but he didn't expect to be blocked today. The two stood on the drill ground and cupped their fists. Before Yuan Chong could react, Yuan Kuang had taken the initiative and rushed forward with his sword. After 2 rounds, Yuan Chong's expression darkened. He realized that Yuan Kuang had developed a murderous intent towards him. This so-called sparring was aimed at his vitals. If it wasn't for Yuan Chong's solid martial skills, he would have been pierced through by the other party. The more they fought, the angrier he became. Yuan Chong forced Yuan Kuang back and asked in a low voice, "What is the meaning of this? Killing someone in public?" Yuan Kuang charged forward again, his moves becoming even more vicious, as if he wouldn't stop until he killed Yuan Chong. Yuan Chong was also infuriated. The two of them continued to exchange blows, and the shadows of their swords and sabers flashed continuously. The soldiers around the drill ground did not know that they were serious. Instead, they applauded and cheered. It was very lively. Yuan Kuang was getting more and more frustrated as he failed to take down Yuan Chong. He lost focus and gave Yuan Chong an opportunity to knock his weapon out of his hand. Give me an explanation. If you don't give us an explanation, we will go to the Lord to judge. Yuan Kuang glared at Yuan Chong angrily. If you didn't jump out to fight with me that day, I would have broken through the Three Mountains Canyon. How would I have given the enemy the chance to burn hundreds of miles of farmland? Now look at the situation. Isn't it your fault that the Lord is in a passive position? Yuan Chong was stunned for a second and tried hard to digest Yuan Kuang's words. He laughed angrily. Things can change on the battlefield in an instant. What you said makes me laugh my head off. Yuan Kuang was really confident in himself. He led the army to break through the Three Mountains Canyon on the first day. Did he think he was a god? The Three Mountains Canyon was indeed easy to attack and hard to defend. But why didn't Yuan Kuang look at who was guarding the Three Mountains Canyon? The elite troops that had been trained with countless efforts were all useless. Even if Yuan Chong had the advantage of time, place, and people, he didn't dare to say that he could break through the Three Mountains Canyon in a day. According to the calculations of the military counselors, it would take at least 4 days to break through the canyon. Didn't Yuan Kuang have any idea? If these elites were so easy to deal with, how could the Lord who led them become the strongest force in Dongqing? It was ridiculous for Yuan Kuang to blame himself for this. Yuan Chong secretly took a deep breath and suppressed the rising anger in his chest. He didn't want to poke a bloody hole in Yuan Kuang. Yuan Kuang glared at Yuan Chong. You can't do it, but it doesn't mean that I can't do it. He was very confident in himself. If he was the one who led the army to attack the Three Mountains Canyon that day, he would definitely be able to take it down and not give the enemy a chance to cause trouble. Yuan Chong, on the other hand, had made a military pledge at that time. What happened in the end? The Three Mountains Canyon was taken down. Yuan Chong was a gentle and low-key person. He didn't want to fight with others, but Yuan Kuang wouldn't let him go. He was very annoyed. Yuan Chong had no choice but to secretly ask Xing Jing for help and inform the Lord Huang Song through him. When Huang Song heard about this, he was even more annoyed. How did Qinzhou become like this? Wasn't it all because of Yuan Kuang's father, Yuan Xian? Yuan Kuang didn't reflect on himself and was a low-key person. He even jumped around everywhere, which was really an eyesore. Huang Song would show some mercy to Yuan Xian, but he wasn't so gentle to Yuan Kuang. He reprimanded him for his one-stop service. Yuan Kuang felt wronged. Because the Three Mountains Canyon was safe, Jiang Pengji didn't send troops to attack Zhanghe County. Instead, she planned to rest for a while and pay attention to the war situation in Wanzhou, waiting for the autumn harvest. If she fought Huang Song now, he could use 100% of his troops to deal with her. Naturally, she would be under a lot of pressure. During the autumn harvest, Huang Song would have to send troops to harvest food. If she sent troops again, apart from this reason, Jiang Pengji led the troops for a long journey and fought a series of battles. Her troops were exhausted and needed some time to rest. Therefore, the front line in Hu County welcomed a strange period of peace. There was peace there, but the smell of gunpowder was still strong in other places. The most intense smell was the front line in Qinzhou and Sangzhou. Yuan Xian died, leaving a mess for Nie Sun to clean up. Unfortunately, Nie Sun couldn't cook without rice. He was criticized everywhere. Feng Jin didn't want to waste time here. Feng Jin didn't want to waste any more time, so he sent people to secretly spread rumors and spread the news of the food shortage in Qinzhou through the mouths of the children. When Nie Sun found out, the rumors had already spread to a large scale. There was no way to find the source. The grain stored in Chinzhou's granary was gone. The people within the borders were panicking. Those who had stored grain at home hid it well to prevent it from being forcibly taken away. Those who didn't had stored grain swarmed to the rice merchants to buy it. In just a few days, the rice merchants raised the price. The price of grain shot up like a rocket launcher. The people could only grit their teeth and buy it. The people who rushed to buy grain blocked the few long streets near the rice shops. As the crowd became more and more crowded, there was a stampede. When the sun set, the crowd slowly dispersed. Chapter 1304. The incident was so big that it inevitably reached Nie Sun's ears. Nie Sun stared blankly ahead, his eyes lifeless. The soldier who reported lowered his head in fear, feeling uneasy. After a while, Nie Sun still didn't move. The soldier plucked up his courage and looked up secretly. He saw Nie Sun holding his shoulder with one hand and holding the table with the other. His knuckles were white from the force and his pale forehead was covered in sweat. The soldier was stunned. He saw red and black blood seeping out of Nie Sun's clothes. He didn't care much and hurried forward to help Nie Sun. Nie Sun fell to the side. Medic! Medic! Help! Nie Sun's old injury reappeared. The wound on his shoulder that had just healed opened again. Fortunately, the wound wasn't long, otherwise it would be troublesome. After the doctor treated Nie Sun's wound, he gave the apprentices a prescription and asked them to get the medicine. Nie Sun slowly woke up. Is the military counselor awake? The deputy general who was guarding the bed shouted, and the other people also came over. Everyone immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Nie Sun's face was pale and his eyes were confused. It took him a while to recover his memory before he fainted. He was calm and comforted everyone in a weak voice, I'm fine. I'll be fine after 2 days of rest. One of the deputies said angrily, if those profiteers didn't take the opportunity to make money from the disaster and raise the price of grain, the military counselor wouldn't have fainted. Merchants pursue profits, and those who are ambitious are few and far between. They're just a bunch of greedy people. As long as they make money, why would they care about anything else? The situation in Chinzhou wasn't good. Those businessmen didn't fear death and took the opportunity to make money from the war. What a bunch of black-hearted people. They're short-sighted. They only care about profit. Why would they care so much? Several deputies expressed their anger. They wanted to send troops to kill all the black-hearted businessmen in the city who raised the price of grain. The more they spoke, the angrier they became. Their voices grew louder and louder until the military doctor interrupted them. Generals, the military counselor needs to rest and shouldn't make a ruckus. You can come back tomorrow if you have anything to say. Nie Sun's skinny hand reached out of the quilt and waved weakly, signaling the doctor to stop talking. He asked weakly, what's the situation outside? A deputy general stepped forward and reported, the rice shop is still unwilling to budge. The price of grain has increased by another 10%. Ever since the news of Chinzhou's food shortage spread, rice merchants who had been hoarding food smelled a business opportunity. They took the opportunity to raise the price and sell old rice at a high price. Feng Jin did not send out many people to help. Instead, it was the rice merchants in Chinzhou who volunteered to help and acted as free tap water. They fanned the flames and caused a food shortage while peddling the stale rice in the warehouse at a high price. At this time, the price of grain was several times higher than usual. It could be considered a sky-high price and had long exceeded the purchasing power of ordinary families. Even so, the food supply was still insufficient to meet the demand. Basically, the moment it was put on the shelves, it was snatched up by the people who had lost their minds. The commoners who didn't have any stored food rushed to buy it, and the commoners who had stored food also followed the crowd, trying to buy more. The streets near the rice shop were tightly packed by the terrified citizens, and there was more than one stampede. Nye Sun was so angry that his old injuries acted up. Seeing that Nye Sun did not speak, the deputy general could not help but say, "Advisor, what should we do now? Why don't we capture those merchants?" Nye Sun asked him, "The reason?" If there was no suitable reason to arrest people, wouldn't it be indirectly admitting that there was a food shortage? An unconfirmed rumor made the people so crazy. If it was confirmed, the whole of Qinzhou would really be finished. The deputy general's face turned red from Nye Sun's questions, and he could not say a word for a long time. He really did not know what reason to arrest people. Another person said, "These unscrupulous merchants took advantage of the chaos to raise the price of grain. Don't they deserve to die? Of course we have to arrest them, but we can't use this reason." Nye Sun closed his eyes weakly and said weakly, "These merchants are selling old rice from a few years ago. Why don't we use another reason? For example, in order to sell the old rice they have hoarded to reduce their losses, they spread the rumor that Qinzhou is short of food to trick the people into buying food. What do you think?" The few of them were happy. This was a good reason. They could openly punish those merchants, and at the same time, they could put the blame of the rumor on the merchants and obscure the current situation of Qinzhou's food shortage. As long as the people calmed down and didn't cause trouble, Qinzhou could still hold on for a month or two. One of the deputies said, "We can delay it for as long as we can. In another month or two, it will be the autumn harvest. When the new rice is harvested, the food shortage will be solved." Nye Sun nodded weakly. Everyone saw that he was tired and chose to leave. When they all left, Nye Sun opened his eyes, and a bit of sarcasm flashed in his eyes. So what if they delayed it until the autumn harvest? Qinzhou had been at war for several years, and the harvest within the territory could not be increased. There was no way to fill such a big food shortage. If Huang Song had some support, there might have been a chance. But Huang Song had given up on Qinzhou. Otherwise, why hadn't Nye Sun replied to the message he sent for so long? As smart as he was, he had already guessed Huang Song's decision, but he could not tell the truth to others. Qinzhou was already in a precarious situation. If the soldiers knew about this, they would collapse overnight. Nye Sun's response reached Feng Jin's ears. He smiled and said, "Nye Qingyun's reaction is not slow." Meng Hun shook his head and said, "I heard that when he heard the news, his old injury acted up again. I don't know how long his body can hold on." Feng Jin said, "It's still not enough." Meng Hun was surprised. "Not enough?" Feng Jin smiled and said, "Here's our chance." At this time, he naturally had to fan the flames and add fuel to the fire, so that Nye Sun could not care about anything else. According to Nye Sun's idea, the rice merchants in Qinzhou who raised the price of grain and spread rumors were arrested, and the seized grain was sold to the people at a low price. Many people bought grain. When the others who were still watching saw this, they immediately lost the idea of buying, and the rumors collapsed. Nye Sun was very clear that this was only a temporary solution. After a long time, the people would still find out. In order to stabilize the political situation, Nye Sun had to deal with government affairs with his injury, and he had less than 4 hours of rest every day. The military doctor tried to dissuade him, but to no avail, he could only let Nye Sun go. Since the old injury broke, Nye Sun's condition was repeated. It was not that the military doctor's medical skills were bad, but that Nye Sun did not follow the doctor's advice. Late that night, Nye Sun's body began to heat up again, and he drowsily slept for half the night. When he woke up, the room was dark. He tried to open his mouth to call for someone, but his dry throat could not make a sound. He could only sit up with difficulty and stagger out of the door. Nye Sun raised his hand and wiped his burning face. Even his breath was hot. What is that? He struggled to open his sleepy eyes and found that the sky in the distance was dyed with a layer of orange light. Chapter 1305. Fire? Where did it catch fire? Nye Sun's groggy brain seemed to have been cut by something. He immediately sobered up and grabbed someone. Where did it catch fire? The person did not recognize Nie Sun. He rushed to put out the fire with a bucket and replied hurriedly, the granary caught fire. Nie Sun did not come back to his senses for a long time, as if he did not hear what the person said. At this moment, the military doctor who was in charge of taking care of Nie Sun realized that he was missing and hurried out to look for him. The military doctor rushed forward to support Nie Sun. Counselor, where did you go? You still have a fever. Nie Sun grabbed the military doctor's arm and stared at him with bloodshot eyes. He asked word by word, where did it catch fire? The military doctor's expression froze and he said awkwardly, Counselor, your health is more important. Leave it for now. The generals have already sent people to put out the fire. It will be under control soon. Don't worry. Go back to the tent and rest. We'll deal with it tomorrow. Nie Sun's voice suddenly became sharp and he asked sternly, where did it catch fire? The military doctor answered with bloodshot eyes, it's the granary. Nie Sun choked when he heard this answer. He saw the world spin and his vision went from bright to dark. Soon, he passed out. The fire burned until dawn before it was extinguished. Less than 1% of the food was saved. On the afternoon of the second day, Nie Sun finally crawled out of the gates of hell and slowly woke up. However, he was not as energetic as before. His eyes were haggard. The military doctor who took care of him also noticed that there were several strands of white and gray hair on his head. He looked much older. Counselor is awake, Counselor is awake. Nie Sun was so tired that it was difficult for him to even speak. However, he forced himself to sit up and slowly looked at the crowd. The granary caught fire last night. Did you find out the cause? Because of the high fever, Nie Sun's throat was dry and hoarse. It did not sound like a man in his prime, but more like an old man in his 70s. The high-ranking officers looked at each other, but no one dared to step forward and answer. Nie Sun was not in a hurry. Instead, he looked at them coldly. He changed the question. Is the fire under control? One of the deputy generals stammered, it's already been destroyed. Nie Sun asked again, how much food did you save? The deputy general said, the fire was fierce last night, and the night wind was strong. In addition, the weather has been hot and dry recently. The fire was hard to contain. Nie Sun looked at him silently. The deputy general was ashamed under his gaze. He decided to say, the rations were badly burned. Not a single one of them survived. After he finished speaking, everyone stared at him accusingly. The military counselor was already in a very bad situation. If he didn't know how to speak tactfully, what would he do if he really angered the other party? Nie Sun did not faint. It was as if someone had pulled out his backbone. His back and shoulders had collapsed, and he looked dispirited. Not even 1 out of 100 survives, he muttered to himself repeatedly, which made people feel sad and uncomfortable. Originally, they could survive until the autumn harvest, and Chinzhou could survive for a while. Unexpectedly, a fire burned all the rations they had. He let out a long sigh, knowing that there was no way to fight this battle. Chinzhou had no other choice but to surrender. Nie Sun could stubbornly defend to the end, but could the soldiers with low morale endure hunger and defend Chinzhou? He asked again, did you find out the cause of the fire in the granary? Everyone looked at each other, and finally, one person stood up to answer. Yes, we found out, Nie Sun asked, what happened? In order to prevent the enemy from attacking the granary, Nie Sun sent a large number of soldiers to guard it. The patrols were rotated every 15 minutes, and the location of the granary was a top secret. How did the enemy still manage to burn the granary under such a strict defense? If it was not a man-made disaster, could it be a natural disaster? The deputy general stammered, and after a long while, he finally said a few words and slowly pieced together the whole story. This matter had to start from the time Nie Sun sent people to capture the black-hearted rice merchants. He used the excuse that rice merchants were selling old rice and creating trouble, as an excuse to arrest many rice merchants and confiscate their grain reserves. Those who had the capital to hoard so much grain in troubled times and make a fortune from the war were naturally not small merchants. Among the rice merchants who were arrested, one was a rich man in Chinzhou. His family had been doing business for generations and had accumulated a lot of wealth. In order to redeem his family, the rice merchant's younger brother was willing to exchange 200,000 dong of grain reserves. As expected of a tycoon, 200,000 dong in one go. Coincidentally, Chinzhou was in urgent need of grain, so this business couldn't be missed. Nie Sun rubbed his eyebrows and thought hard. Finally, he found the relevant memory. This was also allowed by him. Although it was despicable for the rice merchants to take advantage of the situation to raise the grain price, many rice merchants had backers behind them. They were either opened by the local gentry or had business dealings with them. No matter how angry Nie Sun was, he couldn't kill them all. He could only make an exception and release them after paying a certain amount of ransom. The rice merchant's younger brother used 200,000 dong of grain to redeem his older brother. However, he couldn't gather so much grain in such a short time, so he could only send it over from other places. The first batch of grain was 50,000 dong. The other 150,000 dong could only be settled with an IOU and a letter from his family. Nie Sun asked, 50,000 dong of grain? Did you check it when it was stored? The deputy general said, all carefully checked. Every bag is real. 50,000 dong of grain was a large amount. Naturally, they couldn't open every bag and pour it out for inspection. They could only do random checks. The cooks who carried the grain could also tell if it was real by touch. Unexpectedly, the grain depot caught fire that night. The night wind helped and the fire spread quickly. After fighting the fire for a whole night, there was not a single grain depot left. When the deputy general sent troops to catch the rice merchant, he had already escaped with his family last night. They couldn't even catch him. Sure enough, I still lost. Nie Sun curled his lips mockingly. The deputy general said helplessly, Counselor, we still have to think of a way. Nie Sun smiled bitterly, the grain we saved is not even enough for the soldiers to eat for a day or two. What's the use of thinking of a way? Unless the immortals could make grain out of thin air, there was no way to fight. At this moment, Nie Sun hoped that Feng Jin could lead troops to fight. At least, he could drag a few people down with him before he died. However, Feng Jin didn't do as he wished. Not only did he not send troops to attack, but he also sent people to start a fire in front of the formation to cook. Feng Jin said, it's not a loss to use 50,000 dong of grain to exchange for Chinzhou. Meng Han laughed, in order to curry favor with the Lord, that merchant not only doesn't want us to compensate for the 50,000 dong of grain, but also wants to give us 200,000 dong of grain. The situation in Dongqing was becoming clearer. These merchants also began to choose sides and invest. However, their lord was not so easy to curry favor with. Feng Jin said, we have to ask the Lord whether we accept it or not. Merchants chased after profit, and those with ulterior motives were few. They only had profit and money in their eyes. Chinzhou saw that Xia Kingdom was about to collapse, and it was normal for the merchants with keen senses to take the opportunity to change sides. Feng Jin took advantage of the merchants' desire for profit and took the opportunity to give Nie Sun a heavy dose of medicine. Chapter 1306. Even though Nie Sun did not want to surrender, the soldiers could only eat porridge for 2 consecutive days after their rations were destroyed. Rather than saying it was porridge, it was more like rice soup with a few grains of rice added. Other than the elites, many of the recruited soldiers secretly escaped, and more than half of them left overnight. Looking at the desolate camp, Nie Sun's mind was in turmoil. He was a patient and should have eaten better food. However, the military camp was short of rations and even his food was porridge. Are we really at the end of the line? Nie Sun sighed and raised his hand to finish the bowl of porridge. His stomach was empty and filled with water. 2 days later, more and more deserters and the security of the surrounding area suddenly declined. Many deserters were so hungry that they broke into people's homes to kill and rob. Many innocent people died in vain. Nie Sun wanted to stop them, but he couldn't. The people were angry and Feng Jin took the opportunity to open the city gate. Meng Han and the others led the troops and went straight in. The people hid in their homes and didn't dare to come out. Nie Sun had been hungry for 4 days and could only tie his waist to reduce his hunger. The medicine provided by the military doctor also ran out. Military counselor, it's not that I'm afraid of death, it's just that I have to take care of the elderly and children at home. The military doctor packed his bag and prepared to escape. Before he left, he was worried about Nie Sun's health. He felt guilty and said that he was going to escape. Nie Sun didn't blame him. Instead, he gave him a jade pendant which could be exchanged for some money. Go. The military doctor was sad. Before he left, he bowed deeply to Nie Sun and left without looking back. Because of his illness and hunger, Nie Sun soon fell into a coma. When he woke up, he smelled the fragrance of porridge. When he opened his eyes, the surrounding scenery was not the same as before. He was startled. A woman with a slight slope on her right foot came in. She wore her hair in a bun and her skin was a healthy wheat color. She didn't look as delicate as the women in the boudoir, but a little rough. However, she was in good spirits and there was a faint fragrance of medicine on her body. You're awake? You haven't eaten for a long time, so you can't eat meat or fish. So, I asked someone to make you porridge and pour some gravy over it to make it more flavorful. Eat it first to fill your stomach. The woman was wearing a soldier's uniform. It was obvious that she was a female soldier. She was definitely under Lu Shi's command. Nie Sun looked at the woman, then raised his head to look at the decorations around him. He asked calmly, "I've been captured?" The woman smiled and said, "Mr. is not an ordinary person. He is not someone that ordinary captives can compare to." Nie Sun did not understand. The woman explained, "The prisoners of war in the camp can be chosen by retired female soldiers. Sir, you definitely don't want to go there." Nie Sun was silent. He knew there was such a rule in Jiang Pengji's camp, and it attracted a lot of criticism. "Then, you are?" Nie Sun's gaze was indifferent as he looked at the female soldier with curiosity. The military doctor taking care of Mr.'s condition. Mr.'s fever didn't subside and he almost didn't wake up. The woman put down the boiled medicine and got up to get something. She said, "My medical skills are not as good as those of famous doctors, but I'm much better than those quacks." "Mister, you don't have to worry." Nie Sun looked down and drank the medicine that the woman brought. His mouth was unusually bitter. He resisted the urge to vomit and drank the meat porridge that made his thumb twitch. After the meat porridge entered his stomach, there was finally a warm and solid feeling in his stomach. Nie Sun took his medicine and ate his food. He did not seem like a captive at all. The female soldier did not mind telling him about the situation outside. Just as Nie Sun expected, Feng Jin seized the opportunity to break through Qinzhou in one fell swoop. Within 5 or 6 days, he occupied the entire territory. Everywhere he went, there was no resistance at all. The people even spontaneously led the way for him. Feng Jin also cleaned up the mess left behind by the previous leader. He allocated 300,000 dawn of military rations and recruited the deserters who had previously escaped. Soon, the situation in Qinzhou was stabilized. When Nie Sun saw Feng Jin, his illness had improved a lot. When the weather was good, he could even walk a few steps. Feng Jin smiled and said, "Please forgive me for my poor hospitality over the past few days." Nie Sun looked at him silently, as if he wanted to see through Feng Jin. "How do you plan to deal with me?" "Sir is the Lord's cousin. As for how to settle you, we naturally have to report to the Lord," Feng Jin said. "Before that, please rest well. The military doctor has treated you. If you don't rest well, it will be easy for you to get sick in the future." Feng Jin's attitude was very gentle. It was impossible to tell that the two of them had been at odds not long ago. Nie Sun's eyelids were slightly closed, tacitly agreeing to Feng Jin's suggestion. I heard that your wife is in the Yu family in Wanzhou. Qingyun seems to be Master Yuanjing's son-in-law. Feng Jin asked even though he already knew the answer. He knew that Nie Sun was different from Qing Sun. The more he mentioned his wife and daughter's Yu family, the more Nie Sun's attitude changed. Qing Sun buried himself with his former master. Nie Sun would never do such a thing. Not to mention that Huang Song was not kind and had mistreated him many times. Nie Sun nodded and looked at Feng Jin with some desire in his eyes. Feng Jin said, Master Yuanjing is the most respected scholar in Wanzhou. Who dares to offend him? Your wife brought her daughter to seek refuge with him. They will not be wronged. Sir, rest well now. When you see them in the future, they will not feel sorry for you. As they were talking, the military doctor who was taking care of Nie Sun came in with a change of medicine. She bowed to Feng Jin. Feng Jin bowed back and addressed her as Mrs. Dian. Nie Sun looked at the two of them in surprise. Feng Jin said, This is General Dian's wife. Nie Sun was almost shocked. General Dian's wife? Dian Yan's wife? Mrs. Dian smiled and said, Here, I am just a military doctor. There is no Dian's wife. Nie Sun had always been a very obedient patient. Now he was even more cooperative. Feng Jin made sure that Nie Sun had no intention of resisting. Only then did he leave with peace of mind. He only asked a few questions occasionally. He sent the news of the victory in Qinzhou to the front line. Huang Song was angry. Jiang Pengji smiled. Huayu has taken Qinzhou. We can't fall behind. Let's try to finish it before the new year. Everyone should have a good new year. The decisive battle between the two forces was basically set for the autumn harvest. As the days passed, the atmosphere became more and more tense. When Huang Song learned that Qinzhou had fallen into Feng Jin's hands, he was so angry that his head hurt. Because Nie Sun was captured, he could not tell Huang Song the details of the battle in Qinzhou. Huang Song only knew the gist of it. Looking at the battle report, Huang Song's expression was very complicated. If Hua Yuan had not cheated Qinzhou of its grain reserves, Qinzhou would not have fallen so quickly. When he thought of Yuan Xian, that idiot, Huang Song was so angry that his teeth itched. What the F***ck did he mean by tricking his teammates? After being angry for a while, Huang Song thought of Nie Sun again. His already complicated feelings were mixed. After a while, he let out a long sigh and raised his hand to put the battle report aside. Is there any progress on Huaijia's side? He needed a victory to boost his morale. Chapter 1307. Huang Song felt that the amount of sighs he had sighed recently was equal to the amount he had sighed for half his life. He was so worried that he was about to go bald. Qing Jing said, Lu Shi has placed a large number of troops in Wanzhou. It will be very difficult for Huaijia to break through. Please wait patiently, my lord. Huang Song said, I know that too. Wanzhou was Jiang Pengji's nest. Although she was a wanderer, she still valued her nest very much. Otherwise, when she came back, she would find that her nest had been destroyed. Wouldn't that be a pain in the ass? If Wei Ci knew what these two people were thinking, he would probably laugh without saying a word. His Majesty, in his previous life, was really like this. The front line was fighting so hard that his nest was almost destroyed by Qiguan Rang. If it were not for the fact that she had returned in time and that Qiguan Rang's old master was a headstrong fool, she would not have been able to keep her lair. Even so, she still lost a lot of territory. Fuming puffer. JPG, in this life, Jiang Pengji asked Qiguan Rang to guard the base while she led her troops to war. Was this another form of retribution cycle? How strong was Qiguan Rang's defense? Back then, when Jiang Pengji had just taken over Xiangyang district, she was short of troops. The Tsing-Yi army sent thousands of troops to attack Xiangyang district. Qiguanrang did not let the Tsing-Yi army gain any advantage even though the city was empty. It had been 6 or 7 years since that incident, and Qiguanrang had become more mature than before. In comparison, Fengju was slightly younger. His experience was slightly inferior to the astute Qiguanrang, but the gap was not huge. In a situation where the two of them were not too far apart in terms of ability, the soldiers under the tent played a decisive role in the outcome of the battle. Of the two sides, one was attacking while the other was defending. The defensive side's combat quality was far better than the attacking side. Qiguanrang also firmly guarded the pass of Wanzhou, blocking all the routes that Fengju could launch a sneak attack on. He sent troops to guard it strictly, so that the enemy could not advance an inch. He had changed his usual treacherous style. His defense was steady. No matter what tricks Fengju used, Qiguanrang did not budge. Fengju tricked his troops. Qiguanrang was indifferent. He did not fall for it at all. Fengju would send his troops to fight head-on. That was good. The difference in quality between the two sides was too great. If the enemy came, they would only be asking for trouble. Fengju had tried other methods, but Qiguanrang had countered every move he made. The entire defense line of Wanzhou had been turned into an airtight iron bucket by this person. Fengju had been shut out for several months in a row. Attacking by force didn't work. Scheming didn't work. Luring troops out also didn't work. It was too difficult. Fortunately, it was Fengju. If it were someone else with less patience, they would have flipped the table and started cursing. Fengju received news that his elder brother, Fenggue, had stayed at the front lines for a short period of time. What is Big Brother doing at the front line? Fengju couldn't help but wonder. Could it be, Big Brother is Lu Shi? At the thought of this possibility, Fengju subconsciously shook his head in denial. Based on the Feng family's way of doing things, it was impossible for Big Brother Fenggue to become an official now. Because of this matter, he tossed and turned restlessly. Unexpectedly, Fenggue stayed at the front line for 2 days before leaving. Fengju, what was Qiguanrang up to? After asking around, Fengju finally found out why Fenggue had appeared at the front lines. It was because of a letter. This letter was said to be written by Fenggue to his third brother, Fengju. The contents of the letter indicated that he was willing to lead the Feng family to pledge allegiance to Huang Song and work together to help Huang Song succeed. Fengju had come to the front lines for no other reason than to explain and prove his innocence to Qiguanrang. Fengju was stunned. He wasn't stupid. How could he secretly persuade his elder brother to lead the Feng family to pledge allegiance to Huang Song? If he really did that, his elder brother would be the first to expel him from the family and sell him to Qiguanrang. Fengju was a rebel, but he wasn't someone who wouldn't recognize his own family. How could he persuade his family to betray Jiang Pengji when Huang Song was obviously at a disadvantage? His family wouldn't agree to it. This was an extremely risky matter. Who would be willing to take the risk? Fengju's actions would harm the entire Feng family. Therefore, the existence of this letter was rather curious. Could this conspiracy theory be a self-directed act by Qiguanrang to test the Feng family's attitude and stance? Fengju didn't know the complicated plot of Takshu and Lu Shi's family. Therefore, his conspiracy theory was the most logical. This Qiguanrang is very evil. Qiguanrang, he had inexplicably become a scapegoat. As time passed, the day of the autumn harvest was getting closer and closer. There was still no breakthrough on Fengju's side. His most successful attempt was to break through the city gate. Unfortunately, the enemy's soldiers were not afraid of death. They used their flesh and blood to resist the attack, which bought them some time. Hundreds of war chariots blocked the gate. Seeing this, Fengju had no other reaction other than to sigh. Looking at his own troops, their morale fluctuated. Looking at the enemy's troops, even though the defense line was about to be broken, they didn't have the intention to escape or retreat. Instead, they became braver as they fought. Feng Ju had an unprecedented strong thought. It was infuriating to compare oneself with others. He really wanted to pull these people back and train them again. It was inconvenient to send letters at the front lines. After a few twists and turns, Qiguan Rang's secret letter still reached Jiang Pengji's hands. She checked if there were any traces of the seal being opened. Then, she opened the secret letter and took out the letter inside. Takshu. Jiang Pengji read the contents of the letter quickly. Takshu's appearance, which she hadn't seen for many years, appeared in her mind. Back then, she noticed that Takshu was acting strangely. She simply kept Takshu under her eyes and monitored her. Then, she sent her back to Lu Shi's side. Lu Shi also acted as a matchmaker for Takshu. He let her marry into a well-off family. To put it bluntly, Takshu was just an ordinary person. She was a chess piece manipulated by the main system through Lu Shi's hands. No matter what, she had taken care of Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji for many years. As long as she didn't commit an unforgivable crime, Jiang Pengji was willing to let her go and let her die of old age. Unexpectedly, Takshu still courted death and ran out. She was really stubborn. Some disgust flashed in Jiang Pengji's eyes. If it weren't for Qiguan Rang, Takshu's letter would have been leaked. Not only would it have driven a wedge between her and the Feng family, but it would also have caused her to go against Lu Shi in advance. At the same time, the map that Takshu had smuggled out of would have caused a devastating blow to the defense line in Wanzhou. She burned the letter after reading it. Just as the letter was burned to ashes, someone outside reported that Wei Ci had arrived. Let Zixiao come in. Wei Ci was holding a food box in his hand. Jiang Pengji only then remembered that it was time for dinner. What did you burn, my lord? Wei Ci smelled the strange smell of burnt paper in the air and asked casually. Jiang Pengji said, Wen Zheng sent a secret report from the front lines. Wei Ci glanced at Jiang Pengji's expression. She looked gloomier than usual. He had expected it. Could it be that Wanzhou? Jiang Pengji shook her head. No, it's not about the war. Wei Ci didn't ask any more questions after hearing that. He took out the food box. There was a vegetable, a meat dish, and a soup. At the bottom shelf was a large pot of freshly cooked white rice. My lord, eat it while it's hot. Jiang Pengji began to eat. Her irritation subsided with the sense of fullness produced by her stomach. Zixiao's culinary skills are really getting better and better. It's just that there are fewer dishes, so it doesn't go well with the rice. Wei Ci said, My lord often says that I'm a feast for the eyes. Don't tell me that I'm not as good as those dishes. Jiang Pengji froze in the middle of eating. Chapter 1308. The salted fishes kept cheering for Wei Ci, double-clicking 666, my friend. Other people either treated the streamer as a brother or a man, but Wei Ci dared to face the man head-on. He was simply a role model in the brave world. In the past, she had always felt that Wei Ci was too introverted and delicate. Now that she had seen him, he was amazing. His foundation in flirting with girls was very deep. The single dogs were unhappy that they were being fed dog food even though they were watching a live broadcast. Xingyue Tianyun, kick this pot of sour dog food full of love. Handsome lowly, the single dog rejected the dog food and threw it back. Shiyu, I was caught off guard by a mouthful of dog food. Baby refuses to accept this dog food. Zuixian, ha ha ha, a counter-attack from the frog. Has the host been flirted with by the traveling frog? The salted fishes who were watching the commotion giggled, but the older salted fishes who insisted on being single felt threatened. Little Gong, no, don't you think that the host and Beauty Ci have been flirting with each other too frequently recently? What frequency was that in the past? Rain after a long drought. If not for the fact that the streamer would occasionally talk about Wei Ci, they would have suspected that the streamer and Wei Ci were already dead. What kind of frequency was that? Just like high school students, there would be a small test every 3 days, a big test every 5 days, and a monthly test every month. Yu Zishu, sigh, the streamer is no longer the single dog who is single with us. You have been expelled by the Single Dog Alliance. Yaoing Yun, even frogs know how to flirt. There's no place for single dogs in this world anymore. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, she swallowed the mouthful of rice in her mouth, otherwise, she would have lost her composure. Wei Ci readily took the empty bowl that she handed to him and filled it to the brim. He even pressed the bowl down a little. Jiang Pengji's appetite was several times that of an average adult man. Wei Ci was already used to it. He was not worried that she would eat too much. Instead, he was worried that she would not be full. In his previous life, His Majesty had a serious stomach disease. The imperial doctor said that it was caused by a long-term improper diet. In this life, he had to keep a close eye on him. He could not allow this person to act recklessly. What is my lord laughing at? Wei Ci asked. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, in the past, I always felt that Zixiao was a little dull and passive. Now that you've let go of yourself, it's really an eye-opener. Wei Ci smiled. It also depended on who the target was. Jiang Pengji covered her eyes with both of her hands. Her lips curled up slightly as she teased him, Zixiao, don't laugh. I feel uncomfortable every time you seduce me. Wei Ci's smile froze, his jade-like skin was stained with a suspicious redness. In terms of boldness, he was still far behind Jiang Pengji. The audience in the live broadcast room exploded. One by one, they were so angry that they turned into pufferfish, turning their grief and indignation into the power of ridicule. The bullet screen flooded the entire screen. Couldn't they just watch the live broadcast properly? Couldn't they wait until the end of the live broadcast to tease each other and feed each other dog food? Jiang Pengji refused. Who asked the salted fish in the streaming room to always say that Zixiao was their brain woman? She wanted to show them who Wei Zixiao belonged to. The idle spectators were left speechless. Jiang Pengji closed the streaming room on time and wrote a reply to Qi Guanrang. She carefully reminded him of the things he needed to pay attention to. Takshu was just a useless chess piece. The main system had thrown her out just to give it a try. If she succeeded, Jiang Pengji's hegemony would definitely be dealt a blow, and her progress would be temporarily halted. If she failed, she would just be sacrificing a dispensable chess piece. The main system would still be well hidden. Poor Takshu was still clueless. Thinking of Qi Guanrang's description of Takshu's appearance and demeanor, Jiang Pengji felt even more disgusted with the main system. Even if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she could guess what method the main system had used to bewitch Takshu and make her work for it step by step. Someone, send this secret letter to military advisor Qi Guan of Wanzhou as soon as possible. The sooner the better. Jiang Pengji had asked Wen Zheng to guard Wanzhou, not because she was worried that he couldn't withstand the hardships of marching troops. Qi Guanrang was her confidant. There were some things that she didn't even tell Wei Ci, but Qi Guanrang was in the know. It wasn't that she didn't trust Wei Ci, it was just that Wei Ci and Qi Guanrang had different personalities. The latter was more suitable to do this. Moreover, Wanzhou seemed peaceful, but in fact, there were hidden thieves and hidden dangers. She needed Qi Guanrang to help her keep an eye on them. After she dealt with Huang Song and recuperated for a while, she would send troops to Nanxing. The situation in the world was basically under her control. She didn't believe that the main system, who was hiding behind the scenes and waiting to reap the benefits, would be able to endure it. As the autumn harvest approached, the hot weather became cooler. Jiang Pengji sent scouts to investigate everywhere, keeping a close eye on the situation of the fertile fields. Huang Song was also on guard against a formidable enemy. An invisible tension hovered between the two armies. At this sensitive moment, an unexpected person appeared in front of Jiang Pengji. On this day, she had nothing to do, so she led the troops to the nearby mountains for an autumn hunt. The prey was the fattest at this time of year. The food in the army wasn't good enough, but she didn't give herself any special privileges. She ate whatever the ordinary soldiers ate. She was bland and bland. Even with a beauty like Wei Ci watching her eat, Jiang Pengji lamented that there was too little food recently. Thinking that it was almost the autumn harvest and it was a good time for hunting, she wanted to lead the troops out to hunt. Everyone naturally stopped her. Wasn't she afraid of being ambushed and killed by the enemy if she went out to hunt at this time? Jiang Pengji raised her hands and promised, "I won't go far. I'll only hunt in the forest near the camp. I'll hunt some small animals. I won't touch wild boars, wild bears, jackals, wolves, tigers, or leopards. I'll also go out with more than 100 guards. If I encounter anything wrong, I'll come back immediately." After much persuasion, Wei Ci and the others finally relented. Jiang Pengji didn't wait for them to go back on their words. She whistled for Little White, jumped onto the horse, and ran. "I've been too bored recently. I finally found a chance to get some fresh air." Jiang Pengji's words were directed at the audience in the streaming room. Qin Gong, who came along, misunderstood and thought that she was talking to him. Qin Gong held it in for a long time before he squeezed out a sentence. He stiffly interceded for the military counselors and generals. The gentlemen are also worried about the Lord. Salted Fish in the streaming room answered with a smile. Rusu Luo Mao, Qin Gong is young, so he still doesn't understand the streamer's combat power. If the streamer is released from prison, the unlucky ones will be others. Qingxing Jiheyi, Jiang Pengji, nicknamed Jiang Ritian in the martial world. She's a woman who can do whatever she wants. Qin Gong is too young. Pia Pioyang, let me say something inappropriate. I suddenly remembered that a certain prince was also a hunting enthusiast. When he went hunting, he didn't bring anyone with him. In the end, he was assassinated by Su Gong's right-hand man with a poisonous arrow. Streamer, don't raise this flag. You have more enemies than a prince. Rather won't take a postgraduate exam. If the streamer was assassinated by someone with a poisonous arrow, then the plot would be really amazing. Jiang Pengji glanced at the bullet screen and tilted her head to look at Qin Gong with a smile. What are you worried about? Are you worried that I'll be assassinated by a poisonous arrow that suddenly shoots out from the forest? Chapter 1309. Look at how scared you are. I won't bully you anymore. Jiang Pengji smiled. You've all been plotted against, but I'm still alive and kicking. She didn't use her mental strength to deal with ordinary people, but it didn't mean that she wouldn't use it for her own benefit. She would know anyone who stepped into her mental strength field. She had a range of 10 miles, and this was a distance that she deliberately reduced. Who could shoot arrows from so far away? Stabbing people in the dark? There was no such thing. Qin Gong wiped the sweat off his forehead and said seriously, "My lord, my father used to say that the gods are watching over us. Some things can't be said casually. It can easily come true. My lord will naturally live a long life, but there are evil spirits hiding in the dark waiting for an opportunity to cause trouble." Jiang Pengji teased, "Feng Jing still believes in this?" Qin Gong told the truth. "I'd rather believe it than not." Jiang Pengji didn't comment, but she also knew that these little princesses were relatively timid, so she didn't want to scare them. In her mental strength field, all living creatures had nowhere to hide. Naturally, she would hunt accurately. She completely forgot her previous promise to everyone. She wouldn't touch wild boars, wild bears, or jackals, tigers, and leopards. She specifically picked those fierce ones. The big guy took 4 nests of wild boars. A family should be neat. The big wild boar and the small suckling pig were all graciously accepted. Qin Gong was stunned. He didn't know whether to say that his lord's archery skills were superb or that she was extremely lucky. The other guards could only follow behind Jiang Pengji and act as porters to carry the prey. Looking at Jiang Pengji's excited look, it seemed that she was going to plunder the entire mountain. Jiang Pengji hunted another 2 big bugs with white brows and eyes. The 2 big bugs, one male and one female, had just eaten and drunk their fill. They lay down and dozed off beside the skeletons of their prey. They woke up when they heard the movement. Qin Gong was about to say that the big bugs were dangerous, but his lord pointed at the fur of the big bugs. The quality of this fur is quite good. We can peel it off and make a cloak. We don't need rabbit fur for our winter cloaks this year. Qin Gong did not know that when Jiang Pengji was in Langge County, others saw that she was mighty and bold. She did not show any mercy when she hunted the big worms. They compared her to a brave general of the previous dynasty and gave her the nickname, chasing the tiger across the ravine. She ran into the tiger, so she was definitely not the one who escaped. Animals were more sensitive to smells than humans. They stared at Jiang Pengji and soon wanted to retreat. Qin Gong watched in a daze as the 2 white-fronted worms turned around and ran. His lord chased after them without a word. Qin Gong, he was absolutely sure that the military counselors did not need to worry about his lord. Instead, they should worry about the animals in the forest. When the lord came, the animals in this area would have to be sterilized. Before Qin Gong and his men could catch up, they heard the shrill roars of the 2 white-fronted insects, and soon, there was no more movement. Everyone watched as Jiang Pengji carried a large worm in one hand. Her long tiger tail and half of her body were dragged on the ground. Jiang Pengji shouted with a natural expression, "Come here and give me a hand. Don't ruin this good tiger skin. I need to give it to someone else." Qin Gong, ever since Qin Gong could draw a half-stone short bow when he was 7 or 8 years old, his father and 2 brothers often took him out to hunt. His father and brothers were hunting enthusiasts. Qin Gong had seen all kinds of hunting postures, but he had never seen his lord's style. He glanced at the dead bodies of the 2 large worms and immediately understood how they died. His lord had crushed them to death with her bare hands. Jiang Pengji saw that he was in a daze and teased, "Do you want the tiger penis?" Qin Gong said, "No, my lord, you keep it to nourish your body." Jiang Pengji could not help but say, "That is an aphrodisiac. What's the use of eating it?" Qin Gong blinked his eyes in confusion. After a while, he realized that his lord was a woman. How could she say the words, "Do you want the tiger penis," so naturally? He vaguely thought that she was a friend of the same sex joking with him. Jiang Pengji carried the entire team. Most of the prey was hunted by her. Qin Gong's spoils of war were only pitiful musk deer and wild rabbits. Qin Gong was already so pitiful. Needless to say, the other guards were even more pitiful. The group of people carried their prey back to the military camp as if they were robbing a forest. "Today, we'll make meat dishes. Skin the 2 large worms. Send the bones and meat to the kitchen to be boiled into meat soup for the soldiers." The weight of the 2 large worms was considerable. Ordinary soldiers could still drink the meat soup and have a taste of it. Jiang Pengji had too much prey. She only took a portion of it. Most of it was given to the soldiers, and a portion was given to the little princesses. "Where are Zixiao and the rest?" Jiang Pengji asked casually. A deputy general replied, "My lord, there are envoys from Nansheng. The military counselor is receiving them." "Envoys from Nansheng?" Her mouth was quite vicious. She said bluntly, "Isn't Nansheng long gone? Where did the envoys come from?" The deputy general said, "I heard that they are envoys from Nansheng's and Shui." Not long after Jiang Pengji left to hunt, the patrolling scouts found a group of suspicious people and immediately stopped them. The other party took out the official diplomatic documents. The scouts did not dare to neglect them. They immediately brought them back and reported the matter to Wei Ci and the rest. And Shui? I have some impression. What's the name of the envoy? What's the purpose of their visit? The deputy general shook his head. He still did not know. Jiang Pengji simply spread out her spiritual force field, which allowed her to discover a rather strange mass of spiritual energy. In her spiritual force field, everyone turned into a mass of spiritual energy. Through the mass of energy, she could roughly determine the mental state of the other party. Most people were complete and mellow, but that person was different. His mental state was extremely active and unstable, and there was a tendency for him to split. Jiang Pengji immediately guessed the identity of the envoy. She smiled and said, Hua Yuan tricked Huang Song. Why didn't he go back to Shui's lair to hide and lay low for a while? How dare he swagger around and parade around the city? Is he too confident in himself, or does he not want to live? She guessed correctly. The envoy was none other than Shui's strategist, Hua Yuan. He was the man who had tricked millions of dawn of grain in Qinzhou without bloodshed. When Wei Ci heard that Hua Yuan had come to visit, he was also surprised. Because the people and matters in this life were different from the previous one, Wei Ci reacted quickly. He prepared to receive the envoy group that Hua Yuan had brought. He also wanted to test Hua Yuan's intentions. This fellow couldn't be unsatisfied after tricking Huang Song. Would he turn around and trick his lord? Wei Ci thought that he would never see Hua Yuan again in this life. He did not expect the two of them to reunite under such circumstances. After all, they were colleagues in the previous life. Wei Ci was more familiar with the states of Hua Yuan's personalities. He could determine which personality it was just by looking at the other person's appearance. The Hua Yuan in front of him was dressed very cleanly. He looked a few years younger than his actual age. His black hair was tied up with an exquisite crown. There was a faint scent of incense wafting from his body. It smelled good but was not cloying. His clothes were neat and tidy. The materials and workmanship were very particular. Chapter 13:10. The Hua Yuan that Yuan Xian saw was run down and reeked of alcohol. He couldn't even use a cloth to tie his hair and could only use a straw rope. His clothes were dirty, smelly, and ill-fitting. The lapels of his shirt were loose, revealing his chest. One could not help but suspect that he was a refugee. If the Hua Yuan that Yuan Xian saw was a run-down vagrant, the Hua Yuan that Wei Ci saw was a well-behaved son of an aristocratic family. Logically speaking, it should be Hua Yuan's primary personality. As far as Wei Ci knew, Hua Yuan's personality was somewhat complicated. He could act in a family drama all by himself. Hua Yuan himself, Hua Yuan's elder brother, who tricked Yuan Xian, Hua Yuan's deceased wife's lover, father, mother. In addition to these messy personalities, there was also a rarely seen person hidden in his body that was no less threatening than his second personality. It was the person in front of him. Hua Yuan's primary personality was a rather elegant son of an aristocratic family. Although he was weak and incompetent, his appearance was very deceiving. But the person in front of him was different. He had a fierce look in his eyes and always gave people an indescribable sense of oppression. Wei Ci could recognize him at a glance because he had left too deep an impression on him in his previous life. This person was also the core force that supported Shui in slaughtering 630,000 people from the four factions of Nanman. Wei Ci was naturally in opposition. In order to persuade Shui, he persuaded him several times. The last time, he even argued with Hua Yuan. In terms of eloquence, Wei Ci naturally won, but he greatly underestimated the danger of Hua Yuan's personality. The personality in front of him rarely appeared. He called himself the son of General Huban, Gu Chun. His appearance also came without warning. That time, Wei Ci and Hua Yuan parted on bad terms. He was about to leave the government office when someone suddenly covered his mouth and nose and dragged him into the side hall. That was the first time Wei Ci encountered Hua Yuan's personality. The other party was extremely strong. No matter how Wei Ci struggled, he could not break free. His neck was violently strangled. Wei Ci thought he was going to die there. Fortunately, a servant passed by and Wei Ci desperately made some noise. "Who's there?" The servant who was cleaning asked in surprise and pretended to come in to check. Hua Yuan released the hand that was strangling Wei Ci's neck. Before he left with a cold gaze that made people shudder. "Count yourself lucky. Anyone who stands in the way of my revenge against the South deserves to die. If you want to live, don't block my way." At that time, Wei Ci was half dead from being strangled. He was suffering from a severe lack of oxygen, and his eyeballs were so bloodshot that they were about to pop out of their sockets. He looked extremely terrifying. "Who are you?" Wei Ci was very sure that he had never seen Hua Yuan like this. Gulin. Who was green? Wei Ci spent a lot of time looking for information about this person, until one day, he heard Bai Ning mention his master, Gu Chun. In the last years of Nanchang, General Hu Ben Gu Chun went on a punitive expedition against the 4 factions of Nanman. He made many military achievements and was regarded as the Nanchang god of war. Although Gu Chun's meritorious service shocked the emperor, she was loyal and devoted to the emperor. She helped the emperor eliminate many enemies that were an eyesore, and thus offended many nobles and aristocratic families. Some people instigated the relationship between the emperor and Gu Chun. The emperor was not a wise ruler who could distinguish between loyalty and treachery, so he more or less became suspicious. The political enemies framed Gu Chun, using the excuse of delaying the reinforcements and the supply of supplies, causing Gu Chun to be ambushed by the 4 factions of Nanman. Through Bai Ning, Wei Ci found out that Gu Chun did not die. He was lucky enough to escape and become a beggar. Gu Chun escaped death, but his family was not so lucky. Instead, they were accused of groundless crimes. On the way, Gu Chun's family was ambushed by the barbarians of the 4 factions of Nanman and died a miserable death. Hearing this news, Gu Chun was disheartened and became a beggar. In the end, he met the young Bai Ning and received his financial support. Bai Ning learned Gu Chun's skills and treated him like a father. After Gu Chun died of illness, he even organized the funeral for the old man. This Gu Lin was Gu Chun's eldest son. In the year of the incident, Gu Lin had just been married for 2 years, and his wife gave birth to a big fat boy. Gu Lin did not have time to experience the peaceful life of a family before his whole family died tragically in the hands of the Nanman. Hua Yuan's personality called himself Gu Lin, so his hatred for the Nanman made sense. Wei Ci had only seen Gu Lin twice in his previous life. The first time was when he almost choked Wei Ci to death, and the second time was when Enchui slaughtered more than 638,000 Nanman people. Gu Lin had people bring over the 1-year-old children of the Nanman tribes and threw them to the ground with his own hands. Wei Ci was about to go mad when he saw the tragic scene. He still remembered the way Gu Lin laughed as he threw the children. If the children did not die, he would have stepped on them. Not long after the 4 factions of Nanman were destroyed, Enchui's power declined greatly. His line of defense was empty, and His Majesty sent troops south to take advantage of the situation. Enchui committed suicide, and Hua Yuan disappeared. Wei Ci secretly searched for him, and later found him in Nanchang Ningzhou. At that time, Hua Yuan had become a complete lunatic. He did not notice when the children in the nearby villages played with and bullied him. The villagers nearby pitied him and occasionally gave him some money. However, the naughty children went too far. Not only did they give Hua Yuan rotten eggs, dead rats, cockroaches, and bedbugs, but they also gave him pig dung as food. The silly Hua Yuan did not know anything, and thought it was food, so he ate it. When the children saw him eat it, they laughed and threw stones at him. Wei Ci could not bear to see this, and wanted to take care of Hua Yuan. Unexpectedly, Hua Yuan's body was found the next day, dead in front of his deceased parents' grave. Of course, that was all history from his previous life. Hua Yuan in this life was an enemy, and so was Gulin in front of him. Wei Si received Hua Yuan as if nothing had happened, and tested him without batting an eyelid. If it was Hua Yuan, he could get some information out of him, but the personality that had appeared was Gulin. Gulin was not good with words, and looked very quiet. The companions who had come with Gulin also noticed the abnormality, and suddenly felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. They were afraid of Hua Yuan, because Hua Yuan was a demon who could change his personality at any time. In the eyes of ordinary people, he was like a ghost. However, Shui valued Hua Yuan, and they could not resist. Wei Si's expression did not change, but he was surprised at Gulin's motive. Gulin had first appeared because Wei Si had stopped Shui from slaughtering the 4 factions of Nanman. The second time was to take revenge by throwing the children. What about this time? What was the reason this time? Little did they know that Gulin's personality was the son of a tiger general, and he was most familiar with the military camp. People with split personalities had unusually active and unstable mental energy, which also caused their mental perception of the outside world to increase. The military camp was Jiang Pengji's territory, and the mental aura that she left behind stimulated Hua Yuan's mind. Gulin had appeared out of self-defense. Hua Yuan's split personality was a little different. The main personality did not know the movements of the other personalities, but the other personalities knew the main personality. Gulin knew that Hua Yuan had come as a messenger, but he was not good with words, so he could not complete the mission on Hua Yuan's behalf. Chapter 13:11. I wonder when Lord Lanting will be back. Gulin felt uncomfortable. He didn't like staying there as if there were countless eyes staring at him. Wei Si said, "My lord is out hunting. It's about time he's back. If you're in a hurry, I'll ask around for you." Han Yu was still busy, Xie Zhe and Jiang Nongqin were training the soldiers, and Yang Si was nowhere to be found. Wei Si was about to send someone to pass the message and Guchun shuddered. His eyes were filled with fear as he stared at the exit of the tent. Before he could figure it out, he heard familiar footsteps coming from afar. It seemed to be accompanied by an invigorating vitality. "Zixiao, I heard there's a delegation visiting." Guchun heard the voice before he saw the person. He was like a beast that had encountered a strong enemy. His back was drenched in cold sweat. "Greetings, my lord." Wei Si stood up and bowed. Guchun also bowed. "Greetings, Lord Lanting." Jiang Pengji knew who it was at first glance. After all, the mental state of a person with a split personality was too obvious. She couldn't ignore it even if she wanted to. "This is..." Wei Si took the initiative to introduce Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji walked to the seat of honor and sat down. She asked Guchun casually, "What did Shui send you here for?" Guchun froze on the spot. He was born into a family of generals. He didn't like small talk. It was better to leave it to the professionals. Jiang Pengji clearly saw that Hua Yuan's mental state was active again. Several mental groups were squeezing each other, showing signs of splitting again. After a while, Jiang Pengji knew that Hua Yuan's personality had changed. His eyes were not as serious as before. Instead, they were frivolous. His standing posture was not as straight and strong as before. He bowed respectfully to Jiang Pengji and said a lot of formulaic things. Jiang Pengji's eyes lit up. Hua Yuan's personality disorder was interesting. He could switch personalities seamlessly. This personality was the culprit that made Yuanxin cry. Hua Yuan's elder brother. Guchun finally squeezed back and kicked Hua Yuan's second personality out. A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush. "Just tell me what Shui wants." Jiang Pengji listened for a while, then waved her hand disinterestedly. She stared at Hua Yuan and said bluntly, "I've heard of your heroic deeds in Qinzhou. Shui got this huge sum of money for nothing. Don't tell me you're still poor." Hua Yuan was not embarrassed. He said righteously, Duke of Lanting, you're wrong. Jiang Pengji asked, what did I say wrong? Hua Yuan said, if I hadn't taken the millions of grains stored in Qinzhou, how could the Duke of Lanting have gotten them so easily? So Shui feels that this deal is a loss and wants me to pay for the labor. Jiang Pengji teased him with a smile. Master Hua Yuan came all the way here to help me succeed. This is indeed a favor. What does Shui want? Jiang Pengji was a straightforward person. She did not have the patience to explain things clearly in a few words. She had to use a long speech to probe. And Shui had not sent Hua Yuan over to exchange pleasantries. There had to be a reason. If an ordinary person had been questioned by Jiang Pengji so rudely, they would have blushed and covered their faces in embarrassment. It was not shyness, it was awkwardness. However, Hua Yuan was a thick-skinned person who was not ashamed but proud of it. He turned a deaf ear to Jiang Pengji's overt and covert sarcasm. The Duke of Lanting is as straightforward as people say, Hua Yuan said. Hua Yuan said, my master and the Duke of Lanting are old friends. My master has returned to his homeland many years ago. Even now, he does not forget the Duke of Lanting's help and life-saving grace. How can the matter in Qinzhou be enough to make up for this favor? Jiang Pengji listened quietly. When these literati talked, they were like pigs wearing bras. People who didn't know better would think that Shui was on good terms with her. And Shui would always remember her life-saving grace? Nonsense. She would rather believe that Zi Shao would offer himself to sleep with her tonight than believe that. Hua Yuan was good at making friends, but Jiang Pengji did not fall for it. She laughed. So you helped me for nothing? You really don't want anything in return? Hua Yuan said to himself. The Duke of Lanting was indeed not an ordinary person. He was straightforward and harder to deal with than others. It's my duty to help my allies. Moreover, you saved my master's life. Jiang Pengji could roughly guess Hua Yuan's intentions. If she was not mistaken, it should be to make friends and form an alliance. If he really did not want anything in return, why would Hua Yuan come all the way here? Did he really think that Shui's territory was close to hers? Only a fool would do this business if he could not even earn back the travel expenses after spending so much effort to come here. And Shui was obviously not a fool, and neither was Hua Yuan. Jiang Pengji gave him a way out, so Hua Yuan took the opportunity to reveal his true intentions. Just as she thought, the two families formed an alliance to help each other. Jiang Pengji teased, and Shui is really not afraid. Hua Yuan did not understand. What do you mean, Duke of Lanting? Jiang Pengji said, I once formed an alliance with Xian Zhao, Bogeo, and Zhengze. Does Duo Shi also want to form an alliance with me? Hua Yuan's smile stiffened. Xian Zhao was Su Bei, Jiang Pengji's former ally. In the end, she attacked Shanwu City, and Su Bei burned himself to death. Bogeo was Huang Song, Jiang Pengji's former ally. They were currently at loggerheads, and it was estimated that he would not survive the winter. Zhengze was Yang Tao, Jiang Pengji's current ally. They were not at loggerheads yet, but when Huang Song knelt down, she would definitely snatch Zhangzhou from Yang Tao's hands. The countdown to the loggerheads was not far. Now that Shui had come to form an alliance with her, was this a ticket to the next loggerheads? As a maniac with multiple split personalities, for the first time, Hua Yuan felt that he was a normal person, and Jiang Pengji was more like a maniac. Hua Yuan pretended not to understand Jiang Pengji's hint. He smiled and said, those who form an alliance with the Duke of Lanting are all heroes of the age. If my lord has this honor, I would naturally be more than happy to do so. If the two families form an alliance and help each other, when the day comes for my lord to expel the southern barbarians, the Duke of Lanting will reside in Dongqing, and my lord will reside in Nansheng. The two countries will forever form an alliance and advance and retreat together. It will be a beautiful story that will be passed down for generations to come. TSK, that was a good plan. And Shui was also very confident in himself. He wanted to set up Nanxing? Sorry, this farm was hers, including Nanxing. Jiang Pengji changed her mind. On the surface, she dealt with Hua Yuan, letting him see the hope of forming an alliance, but she did not give him a specific answer. After all, this matter still needed to be discussed with the group of princesses. And Shui suddenly proposed to form an alliance with her. She had a feeling that there was going to be a huge change in the power of Nanxing. If there was a huge change in Nanxing, it would be a good opportunity for her to take advantage of it. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. She would be the last person to use a slingshot to catch the oriole. However, before coveting Nanxing's land, she had to first defeat Huang Song and become the only feudal lord in Dongqing. At the same time, Huang Song sneezed out of the blue. Qing Jing said with concern, "The weather has changed a lot recently. My lord, you must pay more attention." Chapter 13:12. Hua Yuan's sudden visit made everyone wary. Han Yu, Yang Si, and the rest had similar thoughts as Jiang Pengji. And Shui suggested an alliance at this time, most likely because there was a major change in Nanxing. They could form an alliance, but they had to figure out the whole story. They didn't want to be betrayed by their ally without knowing it. Thinking of this, they couldn't help but turn their attention to Wei Ci. Wei Ci was nicknamed Know-It-All and was well informed. They didn't know that the Nanxing that Wei Ci was familiar with was the Nanxing of his previous life. He had only been to Nanxing once in this life, and that was when he had the mission of forming an alliance with Yang Tao. How could he have had the time to understand anything else? To Wei Ci, the current Nanxing was an unfamiliar existence. However, a big shot was a big shot. Even without the advantage of being a prophet, Wei Ci could still analyze from other aspects without affecting his pretentiousness. With the experience from his previous life and the information from this life, his understanding of Nanxing was incomparable to that of others. Wei Ci said, "I heard that the forces in Nanxing met and prepared to form an alliance to attack Nanman." Han Yu nodded. "I've heard of it." Everyone had heard of the news, but they didn't pay much attention to it. Nanxing was another country. They had to take care of their own territory first. Therefore, no one knew the outcome of the Nanxing meeting. Although the four factions of Nanman are cruel, they have a fatal weakness. They don't have many people. Their people live in barren and dangerous lands full of miasma. It's difficult for them to produce crops, Wei Ci said with certainty. In the early years, they conquered Nanxing and reaped great wealth, but they lost too many people. According to what I know, the four factions of Nanman had at most 1.7 million people before they attacked Nanxing. Including those who died in the war, I'm afraid. Without waiting for him to finish, Jiang Pengji asked a question she was curious about. The population of the four factions of Nanman is only 1.7 million? Jiang Pengji's expression was a little stiff. How weak was Nanxing? It was actually defeated by the four factions of Nanman, which had such a small population. Deducting the children under the age of 10 who can't participate in the war, the elderly, women, and children, it would be difficult for the four factions of Nanman to gather 300,000 strong young men. Why was Nanxing destroyed? Although the total population of the 5 countries was only 60 million, it was not difficult for Nanxing to gather a population of 10 million. A country of 10 million people was destroyed by a small tribe of 1.7 million people. Nanxing was really a noob. Wei Ci shook his head. My lord doesn't know about this. The situation of the four factions of Nanman is unique and cannot be measured and calculated with common sense. Jiang Pengji was surprised and asked, "What's so special about it?" Han Yu was well-read and knew a lot of information. He immediately understood what Wei Ci meant. I heard that the four factions of Nanman have some strange customs. Under Wei Ci's gaze, he opened his mouth to explain. One of the customs is to abandon the old customs. The land of the southern barbarians is not easy to cultivate and there is a shortage of food. Regardless of men or women, as long as they are over 45 years old and are unable to carry a load of 2 stone, they will move to the mountains and wait for death in a cave of death, just to save food for the young and strong. Another custom was that everyone was a soldier, regardless of gender. The people of the southern barbarian tribe could go to the battlefield at the age of 10. Their bravery and ferocity were not inferior to ordinary adults. The destruction of Nanxing is expected. Therefore, don't be fooled by the fact that the southern barbarians only had 7 million soldiers. The number of soldiers that could actually go to the battlefield was definitely more than 1 million. The destruction of Nanxing was not only due to the lack of combat power, but also the internal aristocratic forces that were holding each other back. Naturally, the 4 factions of Nanman became more and more courageous as they fought. They also knew that they were weak, so the tribal chief never restricted the warriors in the tribe from sowing seeds outside. Instead, he encouraged this behavior. Every time they conquered a city, they would gather the captured women together and hold a celebration party so that the warriors could thoroughly enjoy their spoils of war. For the southern barbarians, the captured women were their livestock. They provided the palace with a moving machine to give birth to their people. However, how could their sowing catch up with the speed of population depletion during the war? It would take at least 11 years for a woman to give birth to a baby that could grow to the extent of being able to go to the battlefield. The feudal vassal forces within the territory of Nanxing kept contending with the 4 factions of Nanman. Over the past few years, the war had been incessant. The population continued to plummet and fell below the 1 million mark. The current population of 1 million, including the newborns that had been born during the years of sowing seeds, their real combat power was less than half of their peak. As the saying goes, strike while they are weak. If they did not counterattack now, would the new generation of children of the 4 factions of Nanman grow up? The 4 factions of Nanman could not withstand such losses, and the power of Nanxing gradually turned the tables. Wei Ci continued, in order to not give the southern barbarians a chance to rise from the ashes, they gathered all the feudal vassal forces to work together and destroy the southern barbarians in one fell swoop. This was expected. In his previous life, Nanxing was even worse. Nanxing was ravaged by the 4 factions of Nanman in various ways. There were almost no decent feudal vassal forces. It was different in this life. First, Enchanting joined the war earlier. He had Lu Zheng and Hua Yuan by his side to assist him. Yang Tao, who should have been operating in Dongqing, went to Nanxing. This caused the battle line of Nanxing against the southern barbarians to be more stable. The situation of the war was naturally more optimistic than in his previous life. Wei Ci collected these thoughts and continued. Previously, Hua Yuan proposed an alliance. He said, if the 2 families form an alliance and help each other, when Enchanting drives out the southern barbarians, the Lord will live in Dongqing, and Enchanting will live in Nanxing. This shows that the situation of the alliance is very clear. Hua Yuan also helped Enchanting obtain 1 million dawn of rations. Compared to the other feudal vassals, Enchanting naturally has a greater advantage. Even if the forces of the alliance were very united, there was a prerequisite for unity. The 4 factions of Nanman were their common enemy. Once the 4 factions of Nanman were destroyed, the external reason for the various forces to unite would be gone. The alliance would only exist in name, and it would be the turn of internal strife. If Enchanting could obtain the support of Dongqing's winner, Jiang Pengji, during the internal strife, the chances of sweeping away the other feudal vassal forces would be higher. Wei Ci said, Hua Yuan's alliance is real, but it's hard to say if he will turn against us after the alliance benefits. Jiang Pengji sneered. What's the point of turning against us after the alliance? Wei Ci was speechless. That's true. My lord loves to turn against us during the alliance period. She's very good at killing people she's familiar with. The salted fish in the live stream became more and more confused as he listened. Luoyu treading on flowers, streamer, have you decided to form an alliance with Enchanting? What about the little cutie Yang Tao? Wasn't Yang Tao Jiang Pengji's previous ally? In any case, he brought troops from Nanxing all the way to Dongqing to help her restrain Huang Song and Su Bei. Even though Yang Tao's motive for doing this was to avenge his father, even if there was no hard work, there was still hard work. She also benefited from it. Tout de fait, don't you know that Yang Tao is still occupying Zhangzhou in Dongqing? Making friends from afar and attacking from close quarters. Serves Yang Tao right for being closer to the streamer than in Shui. Free Lemon, you only know now that she's a heartless woman? Chapter 13:13. Jiang Pengji ignored Salted Fish's attack on her. She said, "En Shui is quite confident. The combat power of the four factions of Nanman has been greatly reduced, but he is still a ruthless character. Can a few forces win by forming an alliance?" Wei Ci knew why she said that. The alliance meeting at Huangshui was an example. A group of people who participated in the alliance never put in the effort. He said, "The possibility of winning is far greater than the possibility of losing." The alliance meeting at Nanshui was different from the alliance meeting at Huangshui in Dongqing. The alliance meeting at Huangshui was to protect the emperor. The enemy was the fake emperor, Prince Changshu, who was trying to become emperor. To put it bluntly, it was an internal battle within the royal family. The feudal lords at the alliance meeting were idle fish watching the fun. For these feudal lords who had grown up, it was the same no matter who became the emperor of Dongqing. Therefore, most of them were just bystanders. The ones who rushed to the front were the spendthrift. They would definitely suffer the greatest losses. The feudal lords each had their own ideas. Everyone wanted to preserve their strength so that their wings would grow stronger and they would not listen to the imperial edict. Nanxing was different. The enemies of their alliance meeting were not their own people, but the four factions of Nanman. They were the barbarians of Nanman who were not of the same race and had different intentions. The barbarians of Nanman were a threat to the feudal lords of Nanxing. If the feudal lords did not join forces to suppress the four factions of Nanman, they might be killed by the four factions of Nanman when they were alone. For this reason, they put in the effort. Their chances of winning were greatly increased. They were not fighting for righteousness. They were fighting for their own lives. Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and said, "In that case, it would be better if I agreed to the alliance." Everyone's opinion was to agree to the alliance. They might as well form an alliance. Regardless of whether they were allies or enemies, they would be crushed by her in the end. And Shui knew that she was familiar with them, but he still came forward. He could not blame her. How could Hua Yuan not know what Jiang Pengji was thinking? Just from the words she said in front of him, "I once formed an alliance with Xian Zhao, Bogeo, Zheng Zhe, and Duo. She also wants to form an alliance with me." Hua Yuan knew that this woman was extremely aggressive, and the danger she gave him was no less than that of the southern man. Hua Yuan did not stay for long. When he received Jiang Pengji's reply, he left with the diplomatic group. Before he left, Hua Yuan's second personality maintained a stiff smile and said to her, "It's a pity that Nanxing has many things to attend to. It's a pity that I can't see the Duke of Lanting unify Dongqing with my own eyes. Here, on behalf of my master, I wish you good luck in martial arts." Jiang Pengji said, "Thank you for your auspicious words." Hua Yuan boarded the carriage and left under the escort of his guards. Other than him, and Shui's heir, the current young master of the Yin family, was also in the carriage. This 11 or 12-year-old boy was still wearing ordinary clothes, and he even smeared some dirt on his face to hide his natural good looks. His status in the diplomatic mission wasn't that of a young master, but rather that of an inconspicuous errand boy. After the wheels of the cart rolled forward for a quarter of an hour, they were already very far away from Jiang Pengji's campsite. Only then did the youth open his mouth to ask the question. "Sir, why are you and Mr. Lu so sure that Lu Shi will win? The situation changes rapidly. Huang Song might be able to make a comeback." Far away from the campsite, Hua Yuan's second persona's brows slowly relaxed. Staying in Jiang Pengji's camp, he was constantly on edge and couldn't sleep the whole night. He kept feeling that he was in a dangerous situation and could lose his life at any time. Now that he had escaped with his life, he relaxed. What did you see at Lu Shi's campsite in the past 2 days? Hua Yuan treated the youth as a student and a son, and he was very attentive in giving him pointers. The youth told him the truth. He was an errand boy, and he could occasionally interact with the military camp's logistics department. Their high quality and discipline left a deep impression on him. Hua Yuan listened carefully and said, "What you saw was the key to Lu Shi's victory." The youth was stunned. Hua Yuan said, "Since ancient times, history books only record the wise men and brave generals who have the ability to determine victory from 1,000 miles away. When have they ever recorded the ordinary soldiers? No matter how smart a wise man is, his plans are still empty words if they don't come to fruition. If a general doesn't have soldiers to fight for him, he's just a boorish man. What decides the outcome of a war is often not the most intelligent people or the most valiant generals, but rather the soldiers. People exaggerate the role of strategists and generals in a war, but they ignore the soldiers. They are the key to victory. Whether it's the strategist's strategies or the general's commands and dispatches, they are essentially auxiliary. It's laughable that people are so ignorant that they often put the cart before the horse." The youth carefully pondered Hua Yuan's words, and the confusion in his eyes gradually disappeared. Seeing this, Hua Yuan smiled lightly with relief. Before he could speak, he felt a sudden pain in his head. He couldn't help but raise his hand to press on his throbbing head. The youth looked at him and knew that his teacher had lost his mind again. He didn't dare to move and looked nervously at Hua Yuan. Hua Yuan rubbed his forehead with one hand and grabbed the clothes on his knees with the other. It took him a long time to recover. The youth carefully called out, "Teacher?" When his teacher lost his mind, he often didn't recognize him. He had to confirm if the Hua Yuan in front of him was his teacher. Hua Yuan looked at the youth with a strange expression. What's wrong? Where is this place?" The youth said awkwardly, "We're on our way back." "Teacher, do you still remember me?" Hua Yuan frowned. He changed his upright sitting posture to a very casual one, and a terrifying look appeared in his eyes. "What teacher?" Hua Yuan looked around and confirmed that he was in the carriage. His expression changed instantly. "You kidnapped me?" The youth was startled by the look in his eyes and asked, "Who are you?" And Lu Shi has grown bolder, hasn't he?" Hua Yuan said, "I'm Lu Shi. Stop the carriage and send me back immediately." The youth was speechless. Oh my. No one expected Hua Yuan to split into another personality that called itself Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting. Wei Ci didn't even dare to think about such a terrifying plot. Even though Hua Yuan's personality called itself Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting, and was stronger than an ordinary person, Hua Yuan's body was too weak. The newly born personality was still suppressed by everyone and tied up firmly. Hua Yuan messed around for the entire afternoon. The new personality finally fell into a deep sleep out of exhaustion, and the original Hua Yuan climbed back online with difficulty. The youth's eyes were filled with tears. The teacher called himself Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting. It was too terrifying. Jiang Pengji didn't know about Hua Yuan's magical operation. She was busy training her troops and preparing to kill Huang Song. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, the wheat fields were no longer green, and the heavy ears of wheat were dyed gold. Usually, at this time, the fields were full of people who were busy harvesting grain. The air was filled with a joyful atmosphere. But this year was different. There were no songs and laughter in the air. There was only a somber atmosphere. Huang Song sent his troops to harvest the autumn grain. He worked overtime day and night, and at the same time, he tensed up and guarded against the enemy's sneak attack. Jiang Pengji cracked her fingers, which made a crisp cracking sound. You're tuning into the A Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.